So I want to welcome you to the second session of our seminars, University Practitioner Seminar Series that we have instituted. These seminar series are a continuation of the UGBS seminar series, which used to create platforms for our academics to influence policy and to engage with fellow academics across the world. Usually we would have held these events at the city center to make sure that we get as many of our distinguished alumni as possible to be part of this. We all know that COVID-19 has come to virtually destabilize everything. And so we have decided to move along and to move these sessions of our seminars online. Now, what we have sought to do is to continue the conversations online to ensure that we are able to create intellectual discourse that allow us to challenge existing thoughts and to be able to create some tensions and discussions that allow us to shape the way policy and practice is done. And so I want to welcome all of you. And as happened, this is the second one. Last week we had one, very explosive. I can be sure that today is going to be yet another exciting session. So what I would do is to allow the head of department, Professor Amponsanteria, who would do the moderation of the session, and then I will come back. But as I said, this is meant to create a fertilization of ideas. These particular ones are targeted at looking at how management has changed or has been impacted as a result of the coronavirus incident. And so we have named them Cobuss, in other words, COVID, Business and Society. Today, we have a lineup of very distinguished speakers, and I'll allow the head of department, Professor Mpasate, to take over from now and to introduce them and get us going. Thank you very much and welcome. So Kwasi, you can proceed now. You have been unmuted.
Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Dean, once again. And good evening to you all, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second session of the University of Ghana Business School's Cobuss series. I mean, just as the Dean mentioned, this is much more an engagement with society and business. And we have lined up this evening people from academia and people from industry to engage much more in the area of human resource management. We're looking at management issues and how this COVID business, this whole COVID pandemic has affected business. Well, that is what we'll be engaging in this evening. Before we proceed, let me just set out some rules because, well, it is not an acephalous society. It's much more an organized unit. That is why our department is called organizational. We organize. So it is important that, well, we set down some ground rules to ensure that, well, there's some order in what we do here this evening. First and foremost, let me indicate that, well, we should all have our microphones muted, even as the personalities present. Secondly, when it comes to the question time, I will expect that, well, yes, it is only when you have a question that you would want to unmute your microphone and perhaps, well, ask your question. And before you proceed to ask your question, please and please again, we would want to also network. So we would want to find out who is asking the question, where you are coming from, so that we are able to also network. Well, it is a network environment, and this platform provides us also an opportunity for us to network and even to fertilize our ideas as we proceed. Well, these will be the rules that will govern our relationship on this platform this evening. Well, to kickstart the presentation this evening is one distinguished personality, an associate professor in the area of psychology, but he finds himself in the business school, yes, in Botswana. It's in the person of Professor Seth Oppong. Seth Oppong read psychology for his first degree, industrial and organizational psychology for his second degree, and for his PhD also read industrial and organizational psychology. This young academic has over 40 publications to his credit, and he researches in wide areas in the area of leadership, in the area of management, and in the area of health and safety. So, well, he's a distinguished personality all over, and he's presented at various conferences. Well, at this moment, I would ask that, well, if we have Professor Seth Oppong here, you could have your slides uploaded and take us away. We are all ears and would want to listen to your interesting presentation. Thank you. If we can have Professor Seth.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Professor.
Yes, as Professor Ambonsatevi has mentioned, I am Seth Oppong, and I teach at the Department of Psychology at the University of Botswana in Gaborone, Botswana. And this evening, I will be engaging all of us on the topic, reorganizing workspaces for social distancing in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So basically what I'll do is that even though we are thinking of what changes have taken place, I'm also going to talk about what changes should take place if we are to ensure social distancing in the workplace. So we'll first of all look at briefly the nature of COVID-19, the public health protocols for controlling the spread of the infection, and then we'll focus a bit on the social distancing, talking more about what I call enhanced social distancing, and then we will look at how we can reorganize a workplace or workspace for social distancing. Basically, COVID-19 is a highly infectious respiratory disease. And we do know that it spreads from one person to the other very quickly. And in terms of the symptoms, people tend to have mild to severe respiratory disease with dry cough, or some difficulty breathing or shortness of breath. Or sometimes some may have loss of taste, loss of smell, a high temperature, chills, headache, and the rest. So that we appreciate what the person would experience when the person is infected with the disease. But how does it spread? The major form of transmission is person to person, particularly if an infected person sneezes or coughs. The person produces respiratory droplets that contains the virus, and that could infect the other person. And where we touch infected hard non-porous surfaces like tables and doorknobs and the rest. When it comes to the impact of the pandemic on humans, it's better to say it's unprecedented. Because if you look at today's situational report from WHO, which they always present the totals for the previous day. So as of yesterday, we had a total of about 4.1 million cases of infection of COVID-19. And just yesterday alone, we had around 81,000 new cases of infection. While as of yesterday, we had a total of about 287,000. And then just yesterday, about 4,000 persons lost their lives through the pandemic. So we can see the impact on the healthcare system, the economy is in downturn because companies are as they should. And we can all attest to the fact that our social life has been grossly disrupted. So we can appreciate what is really happening as far as the COVID-19 pandemic is concerned. But what has been the recommended public health protocols for the spread? The main recommendations have been around social or physical distancing, disinfecting hand and porous surfaces, avoiding touching our faces, and maintaining good hand hygiene. Also wearing things like face shields and the rest. And it has also been recommended that those who smoke at least abstain from smoking that can weaken the lungs because it's a respiratory disease. But let's focus more on the social distance, which is the crux of our discussion for this evening. What is the social distance, physical distancing? It's basically about keeping space between ourselves and others. But oftentimes, that's what social distancing is to. That is what it appears to be for a lot of people. But let's talk about enhanced social distancing. Even in the literature, I am using enhanced social distancing to distinguish how the outcome from social distance is from social distancing that has all the full complement of the elements of the social distancing. And here is about maintaining the distance of at least 6 feet, 6 inches, or 2 meters, or 2 arms length between ourselves and others, covering our mouth and nose when we are around people, avoiding gatherings. These are all part of what has been recommended. Oftentimes, people focus on just the keeping the distance, avoiding non-essential travels, avoiding public transportation if possible, avoiding ride sharing and the rest, and also staying connected while we are keeping apart because we want to maintain.
Prof. Oppong, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Now that I'm talking to you, your line has stabilized a bit. Otherwise, it was a bit cracky and it was difficult for a lot of our participants to hear clearly what you were saying.
So where would you want me to go back to?
No. I mean, you can continue. I guess
Okay.
that people will ask questions. Yeah. So what I will do is that I'll keep monitoring, and if the quality gets better, I'll prompt you.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Proceed.
Thank you so much. All right. So, like I was saying, enhanced social distancing as I use here is not necessarily reported in the literature, but I'm using it to distinguish that from the ordinary meaning or understanding that we have come to associate with social distancing or physical distancing. Because social distancing involves a lot of things rather than just maintaining some distance between ourselves and others. So teleworking where possible and encouraging online learning instead of face-to-face sessions. These are all elements of the social distancing. And that is what I will call the enhanced social distancing. But when it comes to the workplace design, what is it? It's about how we place workstations. And by workstations, I mean the working table, the working seat, about the that's what the workstation model is. So how do we place them in the space, the workplace? How do we place them in such a way that there will be privacy? And in terms of the orientation, I'm talking about how to place it so that you determine the direction in which the worker will be facing when seated in a working position. That is the orientation of the workstations. So how do we do all of that? That is what the workspace design is all about. Generally, we have the private office where we have enclosed space for one person, or we may have the open plan layouts where we have common space for a lot of people that is shared. So this is just an example of the layout I'm talking about. This is more of the free form layout where we have different workstations, the working table, the chair, or the seat, and the other things needed, the cabin, meaning some form of private office, and all of that. That is the layout. So how do we set up the layout to take into account social or physical distancing? Now, in the open layout, we can talk about the freestanding one, where we have just a large place, we have different persons occupying that, not necessarily arranged in a particular order. Then we have the uniform layout, where the workstations are placed at equidistance. And usually they will be separated by panels into cubicles. And then what I showed earlier, this is a type of the free form layout. So having seen the different layouts that we have in existence, what should we do? How do we rethink the workspace design? But to be able to do that, we need to become familiar with some basic ergonomic principles for layout designs. Basically, if you are setting up the layout, you need to orient the workstations so that workers can observe the entrance to the offices. You don't want them to be taken by surprise. You also want them to maintain some privacy. So either the door, the entrance is to the side or is in front of them. And then you also orient the workstations in such a way that you don't have windows directly in front of the worker, or you don't have...
Professor, can you hold on, please? I see Marjorie's hand is up. Marjorie, is there something you want to say? Dr. Marjorie Amanka? Dr. Marjorie Amanka, is there something you want to say? Your hand is raised. Okay, so Professor, you can continue because Marjorie doesn't appear to have an issue.
All right, so I was talking about some basic economic principles that we need to be aware of as we think about how we can reorganize the workspace. So how we orient the workstations, the fact that we need to ensure there's privacy, we have enough lighting for the work that the people are doing. These are all important economic principles that we have to take into account when we are thinking about how to reorganize the workspace. So having talked about the basic principles, so what would be the enhanced social distancing in the private office layout? What would that be? How should it look like? It will mean that we need to discourage people going to other people's offices physically and encourage e-communication. Remember that one of the elements of enhanced social distancing is avoiding non-essential travels. So if something can be communicated via email, via phone, there's no need for people to move to other people's offices if they are in private office. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can. It keeps breaking occasionally, but we hear you. And the network is not stable all the time, but it's okay. At least we have the slides to follow. So I guess that if we could do anything better, fine. But as it is, we just have to make do with what we are.
Okay, thank you. So talking about the fact that we need to encourage e-communication is in line with the enhanced social distancing. It's not only about keeping a distance of about 6 feet, 6 inches between us and others, but also doing other things involved in the social distance. So let's avoid non-essential walkabouts in the work.
Can't see the slide. That's
yes, Professor, proceed.
Okay, so we need to avoid non-essential walkabouts in the workplace, because that is engaging in non-essential travels within the workspace. Then we need to also think about how many people can occupy a particular office, even if it's just for a short meeting. We need to look at whether the size of the office will allow a certain number of people to be in the office and still be able to keep the distance. So that means we need to think about it. For a small office, that means we cannot have such meetings. It may have to be held in a conference room or elsewhere. Then also we need to leave the doors ajar. The reason is that if you prevent people from touching hard non-porous surfaces, then doors ajar, so that they don't have to touch the doors. Then we have to be disinfecting the doors every now and then. So that is very important for us to think about. And if you have to open or leave your door ajar, we also have to prevent distraction from passers-by. So what should we do? Let's think about the orientation of the workstation. We need to orient it so that the door or the entrance door to the side, so the best entrance. But the person will not be distracted easily by people who are passing by. And then this may not necessarily be part of the enhanced social distancing, but it's very important. What is provided access to hand washing stations, either in the hallway or near the entrance or exit doors. That is very important to ensure that there is good hand hygiene in the workplace. So how about the open layout? How would the enhanced social distancing look like in the open plan layout? Well, one of the elements of the social distancing is to provide the PPEs. So even in the private office, we still have to provide PPEs. Then we have to disinfect the shared hard non-porous surfaces before and after use, and what have you. And also encourage e-communication again to minimize non-essential walkabout in the workspace. Remember, this is an open space. We have several persons occupying the space. And in some cases, they may be in cubicles, and others, they may not be in cubicles. But what is also essential is that where you have freestanding layout, where they are not partitioned by panels or with panels, we may want to think about transitioning from freestanding layout to uniform layouts, where the workstation will be placed at equidistance. Our equidistance should be 6 feet, 6 inches, because of the social distance. So in this case, if we have cubicles, then what we want to do is to increase the height of the panels. And I will illustrate that with some pictures and diagrams. And then use a blend of opaque and transparent panels for the partitioning. This will allow people to be able to see others and communicate via signs or whatever means. But where there are no cubicles, then we need to ensure that there is at least a 2-meter radius around each worker. And this is what I mean. Here, these are all patients, right? in the instance of social distancing, we need to ensure that 2 meter distance between this workstation and that station, and also between this and that. And of course, between this workstation and then this other one. But this is the danger. Some management or some employees might think that they are wasting space. So they may want to say place people at their center. But this is very dangerous. Why is this dangerous? It's dangerous because you are creating a human chain for community transmission within the workplace. Because this person is still going to be within the 2 meters distance. So the worker here will be within close human contact of these workers. So if this person is infected, may not be able to infect this worker, but would infect this one, who can then infect this other person. This person can infect this person, but as long as this person is infected, would infect this person and infect this other worker, who then infect this person, and then the chain continues. So to avoid that, we should not be placing people within the stated by having 4 workstation placed at equidistance of 2 feet, 2 meters or 6 feet. The reason is that if you apply Pythagoras theorem, the length of the hypotenuse here would be 2√2 meters or 6√2 feet, which means that this would be just half of the distance, and it will expose whoever is seated here to any infection that these other co-workers will have. So we cannot place within the space created by the sacred distance between the 4 workstations. Now, when I said that we should look at increasing the height of the panels that are used for the partition, I'm referring to something like this. If you look at it, this is quite short. This person can just get up, talk over to this person, can equally cough and sneeze and expose this other person. So to prevent the exposure, we have to use panels that are longer or higher, if you like, so that this person cannot easily talk over to this other person. But we need to ensure that whatever we are going to use to increase the height may be transparent, so they can still see themselves and signal themselves if they need to. But if you look at this panel too, from the base here to this, you realize that all it takes is just a few seconds. Person can pull herself back and then be able to talk to this person. We want to keep some distance. That's what distance is about. So it is better to use one that is long, so that it will be a lot of work for this person to pull the seat all the way back, just so that the person can talk to this other person and carry the e-communication. So they don't have to be moving into other people's small spaces to expose them to infection. Yes, and this is what I was, when I said one with higher height and the base should be longer, this is what I mean. So if you have something like this with transparent panels here, the person can easily see who is coming in or talk to anybody. We could really have one that is transparent here, so the person can still get up and see the other person and signal the person. So these are the things I'm thinking about in terms of what the chemicals should be looking like as we prepare to resume production and activity in various workspaces. Now, how about customer interfacing spaces? That is challenging. It is challenging because of the fact that we are going to have a lot of people coming in there. And let's remember this, that exposure to the infection is a form of accident. And so we want to minimize that accident in the workplace. So what should we be thinking of doing? We should be making demarcations on shared customer waiting sofa in the waiting rooms, and ensure that the distance between 2 customers will be at least 2 meters. and also insist that they wear the PPEs. And when it comes to insisting that they wear the PPEs, this can be helped if the state is also involved. The state enforcing the idea that you cannot go out without wearing any of the PPEs, so that it will make it easier for companies to also insist that their customers wear the PPEs, because the companies cannot be handing out PPEs to everyone. These are not reusable in terms of two persons using it. So the state will have to play a role, or the regulatory authorities will have to play a role in helping companies insist that customers wear PPEs. Again, we need to also disinfect tools that are often shared by customers, like the visitors tags, pens. Think of the security gate. Someone comes in, the person may be infected, we don't know. But we did a temperature check and it didn't show up. All right, so the person is given a pen by the security person, or the personnel. The person uses that, and another person comes and takes the same pen. It may be infecting others because the virus could still be on the pen. So we will have to think of disinfecting these, or if possible, customers use their own pens. But of course, we have a situation where customers will come in with their pens, and so we have to provide the pens. But let's think about disinfecting them before and after use, because there can still be a conduit for the spread or the infection, because these are all hard, non-porous surfaces. And then also we have to ensure that if we have movable seats, then we place the seats at least 2 meters away from each other and all of that. So, and then where we have people queuing, let's control the queuing by making demarcations on the floor with the same distance in mind. That will help us at least control that and ensure some element of social distancing in the workspace. So what are the implications? So there are implications for cost. Yes, cost of replacing work seats and cubicles. But I would say, but why should employers invest in this? Well, we do know that investment for safety or in safety infrastructure is often expensive, costly. But we do know that safety pays. But the question has always been, for whom? In this particular case, let's think about what COVID-19 has done. Employers are making money because there's no production, right? There's no productivity, or very little productivity, limited productivity. So if we invest in this kind of infrastructure now, we are preparing against future pandemics or other infectious diseases that may break out in the workplace. So we should be thinking about the cost and then the return on the investment in this sense. In fact, it might be better not to think of this as cost, but as investment that we are making. Investment that will help in reducing or bringing about some cost savings in the future. This also means that we need to think about what the bottom line should be when we are making economic decisions in the workplace. Oftentimes, the economic decisions are underpinned by productivity or ensuring that there is high productivity and also worker health and well-being. But oftentimes, we tend to tilt towards productivity. But this is a time for us to push the pendulum a little bit closer to worker well-being, and ensure that as we think about reorganizing the workspace, we are not only thinking about how to maximize profit, but we are also thinking about the worker well-being. And in fact, the worker well-being is profitable. We know what is happening now. Companies are losing a lot of money. So if we think that investing in safety is costly, then we can think of what COVID-19 has done now. We also have to rethink what we mean by work. I've often told people that if you want to understand how or what people understand by work, get up on any Monday morning, go to the street and ask people where they are going to. They will say they are going to work, but ask them if they mean they are going to do something or they are going to a place. Oftentimes, work has been thought of as a place, but it's something we do. And COVID-19 has actually emphasized that. That is why employees are encouraging work. So we need to really think what work is. Work is not necessarily a place we go to. It is something we do. And where it can be done from other places, and as a monitor, then why we have to rethink work schedule. The 540 work week, we need to do that. So that where we have even the need for additional, is it possible to the work schedule so that we have part of the workers coming in some days and coming other days, and still working the 40 hours a week. I'm sure when you look at the labor laws of various countries, there may be some provisions for that. The Labor Act 65 for Ghana, it says that you can increase or vary the work hours up to 9 hours. So it means that there's some room for people to operate. And I'm sure you can find something similar in other labor acts. We also have to rethink what we mean by capacity of space within the workplace, because it is going to affect what we think or how many people we think we can place in a particular space. In the past, it has been economize the space so we can have more people in there. But now, social distancing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic is telling us that we can't have people crowded in the space. Of course, crowding is more psychological than density. So the space density there. Should we have a lot of people there, or we should have fewer people there? COVID-19 is telling us that we need to break the chain of the spread of the infection. And one way we can do that is to ensure social distancing. And then we have to think about automating some of the aspects of work where it is possible. And finally, I would say that we have to get for employers or managers, if you want customized solutions, you have to get professionals to do proper workplace economic assessment or evaluation, so they would know what solutions will work best for you. So what I have tried to do is not just talk about what changes may be taking place, but what other changes that will take place in our workspace as a result of COVID-19. So these are the works that I consulted, and say thank you for your attention. I hope I did not take all the 40 minutes, so there can be questions. So thank you very much.
Professor Ambassador, are you there? He's disappeared. Okay, so before we get our HOD back, I can see him online. Before we get him back, let me ask for questions. There is somebody who put his hand up already and said, please, I have a question.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, please go ahead, Hope.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So if I were to take you back a little bit when we started when Prof started the presentation, we first started by considering basic ergonomic principles, and one of those ergonomic principles was that of Windows. That he said it's advisable that the workplace not have windows that are either directly in front or at the back of the workstation for glare. And then so like I read somewhere that the COVID-19 virus or the coronavirus is adversely affected by sunlight. That is, sunlight is able to kill the virus. So I wanted to ask that in addition to sanitizing and disinfecting workplaces, is there a way to position the workstation in such a way that maybe sunlight can penetrate and like be able to like reach the workstations? Is it a good idea or not? Yeah, that's my question.
Where are you reading us from?
Oh, I'm from Bhutan. I'm from the university right now of Bhutan.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So, Professor, did you hear the question?
Yes, I heard the question.
Let's see. Let me take one or two more so that you can respond together.
All right.
Great. So I've seen a couple of hands up. Collins Ajimambedu, are you there? Oh, sorry, I've muted you. Let me unmute you. Yes, please. Okay. Dr. Collins.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much, my good friend, Professor Seth Oppong, for your delivery. I just have some few questions just to throw up so that we can spice the discussion. Foremost, would you suggest that given a smaller space, irrespective of how we redesign the space, we should put off air conditions simply because we are aware COVID-19 potentially is airborne? That is my first question. And then second question, when you talk of PPEs, I am sure you are talking about wearing your mask and possibly in some cases, the other PPE could be gloves, depending on the nature of your work. But we always talk of don't touch men, where the men refers to the mouth, the nose, and the eyes. In most cases, we talk of the mouth and the nose by way of mask. What about the eyes at the workplace? That is my second question. And then my third one, you know, Professor Amponsa Teria is my head of department. And the office space he has given me, I'm sharing with a colleague lecturer. Now I am supposed to come back to work. What admonition do you give to this, my head of department, and Professor Baole, who is also my dean? What admonition practically will you give to him so I can dispel all the likely fears and also ensure that I adhere to the social distancing protocol adequately, simply because there is only one entrance, one exit. It doesn't matter where my colleague sits, we will rub shoulders. So what admonition will you give? And my last question, if you talk of the distraction in terms of opening your door ajar, and the fact that you need to position yourself in such a way that you don't see everybody passing by. Doesn't this also have safety implications, especially in areas you cannot be sure who likely can also enter if your back is facing the door? And lastly, will you suggest we adopt a clean as you go policy in organizations? Because if we allow the cleaners, in most organizations, we resource the big bosses with PPEs, and we leave our security men and our sanitation personnel. will you accept a clean as you go policy so that my dean, Professor Bawele, will clean his own office, he will dust his own office so he doesn't risk himself? Or would you still recommend we still use our general sanitation personnel to do this in our offices? Thank you.
Great. So that's a mouthful. Professor Mpasate, now you are back. I was looking for you. I didn't find you, so I decided to moderate in your stead. Once you are here, I would support you as you moderate. But let's ask Professor Oppong to respond to the questions he has, and then we take another batch.
All right. So let me first of all respond to the question from the colleague here in Gaborone or in Botswana about the fact that sunlight is reported to have some effect on the virus, and whether or not I would encourage us to have sunlight in the workspace. All right, so let me take it this way. The basic economic principle I mentioned is that don't place the workstation in a way that would make the worker face directly a window or have the window behind the person. It does not mean sunlight, if there are windows, will not come into the office. So there'll still be sunlight, all right. All right, but if you also read further, you will understand that they are saying we don't have conclusive evidence to show that high temperature can destroy the virus. So then we have to practice the other recommended protocols. So that is what I would say. There's no problem having sunlight, but just don't place the workstation in such a way that there will be glare on the visual display unit or the monitor the person will be using. Then about the air conditioning. Yeah, well, for now, it has not been declared conclusively that the virus is airborne, but it's said to be potentially airborne. So should we switch off the ACs? Okay, so let's think about this in relation to thermal comfort. That is the degree to which a person feels warm or cold within the particular work environment. The person is in normal clothing. We need to think about the fact that we don't experience the temperature the same way, even if we are occupying the same space. So it is rather important for us to ensure that we have some, how should I put it, appropriate amount of cooling in the system. But as long as we are wearing PPEs, mouth or nose mask and the rest, it's still helping us and protecting us. So the question would be, if it is airborne or potential airborne, when we find ourselves in a windy environment, then what do we do? Our only sure protection against that would be to wear the PPEs. So in the same way, let's ensure that people or become comfortable in the workplace. And that's what I mean by the thermal comfort. So they should have they should enjoy reasonable thermal comfort and be able to do the work. Because we have situations where you can be in a windy environment, but then you can't control it. So conditioning should not be taken off completely because of the issue of thermal comfort. And heat stress is not something we also want for anybody. So we need to balance that. Then how about when we share offices, what should we do? What should we do? Okay, so when you share office, almost like an open plan layout. So some of the things I've said so far would still apply, but by leaving your door ajar is still important. So people don't come in and then be touching the doorknobs. But let's also ensure that the distance between the two occupants of the office is so reasonable for social distancing. And then we insist that we wear the PPEs. It is important. And also something that is very critical is to avoid having a third person in the office. So it's important if, for instance, you're expecting a visitor, you negotiate with the other occupant. So we don't have all three in that space if it is not big enough to allow social distancing. So it's very important we take that into account.
Good. Thanks very much.
And then,
yeah.
And then let me talk about the clean as you go. Yes, it's something that I have been thinking about, that you are in executive suite. Somebody you have your conference table, you have a meeting, so you are done. Do we want to call the cleaner, who we don't know, may be infected or not, to come and disinfect that? Maybe we should rethink that one, so that individuals can disinfect the hard non-porous surfaces they have around them. This is not about mopping the floor because they have spilled liquid, but it's about your own desk or the conference table that you have. You would want to disinfect that yourself. It's very important we do that. Yes, so that is about it. I don't know if I missed any question.
I think for the sake of our time, so that Prof. Oppong, so that we can get the other presenter, there's just one more question that I'm going to allow, which is a question that is written here. It says, I have a question. Having worked here in Botswana for some months now, you would have noticed that the formal sector exchanges greatly with the informal sector, buying food and other products. What advice would you give to government in similar contexts about the workspaces of those who work in the informal sector to avoid transmission between these two sectors? Briefly, please.
Okay. All right. So in the informal sector, or the informal sector interfacing with the formal sector. So what can we do? It's the same issue of insisting that people wear the PPEs is very important. Just like I think it's been done in Ghana now, where the police or the law enforcement agencies are enforcing that people wear the PPEs. We should also encourage it. And then because we cannot be sure that those in the informal sector may have access to hand washing stations or hand sanitizers, it is proper on our part, particularly those in the formal sector, to carry their own hand sanitizers around and try to disinfect as often as possible. Because you cannot control the informal. If I understood the informal sector to mean the under-regulated sector of the economy, then you cannot really regulate everything that they will do. It's just like sitting in a combi, as we call it in Botswana, a combi, or we call it trotro in Ghana. So if somebody is sitting in a combi, there's very little you can do to control what the driver will do. But at least if we insist that a combi that should take 3 persons for a row should take, say, 1 person or 2 persons, and that the driver should provide hand sanitizer, so the passengers sanitize their hands before they board the vehicle, that would also help. Yeah, so that's basically some of the things I would say.
Thank you very much, Professor Oppong. I know that there are still a couple of people who have questions to ask, but we have 3 other speakers lined up. So what we may have to do is to move to the next speaker, and then towards the end, if we are able to save some time, we can open up for free-for-all questioning. Castro, I've read your question. Richmond, I've seen your hand up. You want to ask a question, but please let's make progress and let's see if we can save some time towards the end, so that other speakers don't have to wait for too long. So let me invite back the head of department, Prof. Samposatewia, to introduce to us the second speaker. Prof. Samposatewia, please take over.
Thank you very much, Dean. Our next speaker, well, thank you very much, Professor Seth Oppong, for that excellent delivery, quite practical as well, and I enjoyed it. I had some couple of questions, but well, I'll find a way of asking them as we go along. Our next speaker is in the person of Dr. Yvonne Lamptey. Dr. Lamptey is a lecturer at the Department of Organization and Human Resource Management. Well, he has a first degree in Human Resource Management, BSc. He has an MPhil in Human Resource Management. And Dr. Ayeki also has a PhD, and her specialization is in the area of industrial relations. She has a number of publications to her credit in that area as well, and also serves much more with the alternative dispute resolution bit. He does a lot of work in that area as well at the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations. Well, without much ado, I invite Dr. Yvonne Lamptey. I must also indicate, and that is very important, she happens to be the senior hall tutor of the prestigious Walter Hall of the University of Ghana. Well, without much ado, I invite Dr. Yvonne Lamptey to take us away. Yvonne, well, you have the floor.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much, HOD. And thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts. This is an ongoing thinking, and I want to provoke the discussion on the issues. So when you look at, continue with that discussion, when you look at the effect, sorry, I've messed up my slides. What did I do wrong? Okay, so when you look at the discussion, ongoing discussion about how to manage workplace and look at how to get employees and workers involved in the process to be able to get the workplace comfortable for us to work in whilst we face this situation of the disease we are still looking for a cure for. We noticed that we need to measure the resilience of workers. There has been some work that looks at labor market resilience, and that measures it at the macro level. So I will take us through that, and then we'll look at what my expectation or my thinking is moving, where my thinking is moving towards. When we look at labor markets, the labor market resilience, we are looking at demand and supply. The measure looks at demand and supply of sustainable jobs. This also covers the quality and the quantity of jobs. So meaning that if we have trained workers to do the work, they should be able to find jobs to do. Then we would say, and the jobs should be of quality and they should be sustainable. Then we would say that that labor market of that country is resilient. So for the labor market resilience index that has been measured this year, mentioned some developed countries as showing some kind of growth towards that index. And so until the outbreak of COVID-19, and this pandemic has hit us on a large scale, and governments are focusing all their efforts and attempts on trying to get cure and preventive measures, public health interventions to be able to support the citizenry. So the focus of the governments now, or of countries now, are looking at getting people not to be infected, those infected getting help to recover. And then there are also some socio-economic interventions that look at minimizing this impact. And it is mainly to go with those who are suffering and have been affected by the pandemic. And so it looks like no country seems to be able to say we're really prepared to face this outbreak. And so when you look at these kinds of trends over the years, you would mention SARS, you would mention the swine flu, you mentioned the MERS, the Ebola, and then now we have COVID-19. But even though we have been through these phases, we do not seem to have foundations we can hold on to so that would say that the impact could be reduced as we progress in years. And so my discussion now is to look at what we can do as workers to be able to support the labor market, or to move the work environment forward. And so we have the labor resilience index that measures the labor market resilience across the world. And so this index typically looks at the structure and policy regimes or pillars of the countries. And when you look at the structure, it looks at typically what should happen at the macro level, at the national level, and it looks at the number of the age demographics, and it looks at what the countries are in the long term in relation to their population. And then we are also looking at value-added technologies that organizations can use to take advantage of new opportunities. So even if you are hit with some kind of severe force, like a force majeure, as we are facing now, you would be able to look at new opportunities that you can take advantage of. And so we will look at the country's knowledge and abilities within its frame to harness these opportunities. And so the labor structure then becomes very interesting for us to look at. And during cyclical changes that we face over the period, and we also want to look at the inequalities in the skill of workers. So if you have a country that has high skilled against low skilled disparities, and it is high on that scale, then you are saying that you have lower and it is negative, then the inequality is weighing towards low skilled jobs, and that is what we typically add up to the informal sector, or the numbers that we measure in the informal sector. And then when we look at the policy frame, we are looking at what we will be looking at the expenditure of the countries will put into creating infrastructure for education, and the skills that are churned out, the quality of the skills that are churned out to absorb the demand for labor. And we will be looking at the policy framework. We will also be looking at gender balance. We will also be looking at, for instance, support mechanisms that the government typically puts in place to be able to ensure that the labor market is moving towards the scale where we would say we are creating sustainable jobs of the quality and the quantity the organization or the country really needs to work with. And so in this case, that will also mean that we'll have to look at technology and innovation, and we'll look at how much expenditure does the government invest into research and innovation, for instance, which would then produce the levels of competitiveness that the country is looking for. And in this case, we are looking at access, and we are also looking at infrastructure and the business regulation environment that enables entrepreneurship. And in this case, when we look at the entrepreneurship, we are looking at how many people would be able to use the skill, utilize the skill that have been earned during their phases of training and development and schooling. And so we want to look at how these come together. This measure or index of the labor market resilience was taken before the outbreak of the COVID-19. And it indicated that some countries in the US and the UK show some positive growth or progress towards resilience in their markets. And so they recorded lower unemployment rates. And when you look at what they are doing, you notice that it is more towards the structural shift to provide some kind of room and facilities to hire lower skilled workers. The measure also indicated that in sub-Saharan Africa, we scored low, the continent and the countries scored low on all the averages, except for the demographics. This indicates that we have numbers and the populace for work, but it is that the market is not able to absorb them. And there's data indicating that, for instance, in Ghana, we produce about more than 300,000 graduates every year. And then we are unable to absorb all of them into the labor market, looking at the diversities of skills that we have produced. And so to be able to move towards the labor market resilience, achieving resilience in the labor market, we have the structural and policy paths we can take. So the structural part will look at the economic diversity and the complexity of jobs and the parameters the government or the country needs to put in place to be able to create the jobs and be able to attract or absorb the skills that it is providing. And then when we look at the policy part, that is the regulatory framework that we have to support all the indices that I described earlier under the resilience index. And so when you look at this chart, it just tells us some countries that are making efforts towards growing their index or resilience. So some countries are stronger on the structural pillar, others are stronger on the policy pillar. So it actually depends on the strength of the country. So the country will have to look at the strength and know which foot to put forward first. That notwithstanding, it also doesn't mean that to produce resilience or to be resilient, become resilient, you can take one path and leave the other. They have to work together. But of course, you can take one step first, either the structural, and support it with the policy, or probably develop short-term policies to support what is happening within the country, and then develop the structures to move along. If a country particularly is described as not being resilient or not having a resilient labor market, then we are looking at the situation where the country is unable to absorb the numbers. And this is what the report is showing across the world of most of the countries. So countries then need to build and diversify their economies and look at the educational outcomes. It is also very important that countries will be looking at the skills produced from the education, and then how that translates directly to the work that the labor force is required to do in the environment. So that just gives us a background of how the index measured before the pandemic. And then there was the breakout of COVID. And during COVID, we are all shaken. We have been affected badly, and everybody is shocked and now trying to find ways to do work or perform work. But when you look at the pandemics that have happened over the years, you notice that it is mainly aggravated by the travel of people, workers across boundaries. So it becomes easy for the virus or the disease to spread, and then it impacts the workers greatly. And so when you look at the background of where this is coming from, you would notice that the global impact on workers has always been similar or very close, the same. And so from the beginning of when these pandemics have been breaking out in different areas, when I looked at it, you notice that the impact has greatly been on the service industry, and workers' movements have been restricted to stay at home and probably work from home, and possibly work from home. And then workforce or workers fall ill, they die when they are not able to recover. And then everybody becomes afraid, because you want to save your life or to live and continue working. And measures employers have put in place over the period, were able to put in place over the period, was to stop staff activities. And so staff workers are allowed to ask to go home, take leave without pay, especially during the lockdowns or restricted movement where workers are not able to work. And eventually there are terminations. Some workers are even were even terminated before the lockdown. They lost their jobs. And so when you look at the changes in the routine and workers are asked to work from home, others get reduced hours of work. And then you see that even those who are, the workforce that are infected then get quarantined. So lifestyle of workers typically change when these outbreaks occur. And now we have the COVID, and tracking whether the effect and the impact on the workers is any different on from previous outbreaks. So when you look at the ILO report that is generated, you notice that the global effect is not significantly different from what has been happening over the years. So you would look at, for instance, unemployment rate that is increasing over the world or in the countries. Those in high income countries are even recording higher unemployment at the moment. And then those who have social support systems are even getting stressed about it, because you have a lot more displaced workers looking for a way out to be able to stay alive. So for survival, a way to survive out of the effect. And so when you look at the ILO framework, they provide us with, or countries with, ways out to be able to support the people within the countries. So you have, for instance, workplaces are supposed to be protected. And when you talk about this, you are looking at the employer's side, which means the employer is supposed to make sure that there are safety and health measures, should make sure that there are work arrangements that should support work for those who are still working. And then discrimination against categories of workers should be avoided or managed as much as possible. The workers who are ill, are taken ill, or are exposed should have access to health facilities and stuff. When you look at this framework, you actually notice that the ILO proposes that employers expand access to paid leave. That will also mean that employer will have to look for ways of paying the worker if you are on paid leave. And then to stimulate the economy, the countries are required to put in these fiscal and monetary policy frames and look at how that can feed into the lending and financial support it is providing for the entire sector. And then the supporting, the framework also provides for employment and incomes to be supported. So workers should be supported in this regard. And so when you look at the social protection and you look at the retention of work, so which means that work should now be on a short time basis, there should be paid leave, there should be other subsidies, and then there should also be some tax reliefs and financial reliefs for those who are badly affected. And this is mostly the medium, small, and enterprises. And so when we look at this, this is the frame that ILO provides, and all countries are working around it. When you look at the interventions and the stimulus packages that are provided by the countries, you notice that it falls within the frame to provide some kind of support for labor and the other members of the country, the citizenry in general. How does this look like in the Ghanaian context? So on the May Day celebration, we had the leader of the TUC present to us in the country and telling us the effect of COVID-19 on workers in Ghana, saying that overtime has been stopped, workers are unable to repay their loans, shift work has reduced for those who are still holding on to some shifts or having some shifts of work to perform. Companies are closing down because they do not have way out, and workers in these companies have to go home. And then employers are also, because of that, employers are also unable to pay for the social security for their workers and even provide for PPEs. And it is interesting, the Minister of Health mentioned in a TV broadcast not too long ago that even the offices are becoming hotspots. Hotspots meaning, for instance, I think there were organizations where a whole batch of workers were found to be infected, and they were all supposed to, they were all taken away for care. And branches of companies are now closed down because one person had it and took it to the office, and everybody else is in danger in the organization. And so you realize that employers in this regard are either not able, so from the report, are either not able to provide adequate PPEs to their workers. And other workers are also experiencing pay cuts and eventually getting laid off their work. This report also informs us that the informal workers have lost their livelihood. And when you talk about the informal workers in this regard, it is important to look at the larger scale to be able to understand the import. So from the ILO report again, on the informal economy, on low income economies, the informal sector is about 90% of the workforce. So you can imagine the gravity of the workers who have lost their livelihoods. And many more are still going to go. Workers are stressed, others are feeling lonely and experiencing some sorts of pressures. And so when we look at the interventions the government is providing protection for its people, rebuilding the economy, and to find a way out, and providing packages for industries and small-scale industries and the workers, and then even the employers to be able to get help. But the bottom line is that the government is looking at, I want to make sure that my workers are not infected, and I want to make sure that those who have the infection are taken care of. And so then the discussion now is, or to move the discussion forward, I am looking at what workers are really looking for. So these packages have been provided, they have seen the impact, and the impact or the effect of the outbreak is not just for this year. It has happened over the years, over and over again. But what are we learning to be able to move it forward? And it looks like all the strategies and the mechanisms and the frameworks that are being provided leave the responsibility on either the government or the employer. So in this case, I would like us to look at what workers are looking for. And in this presentation, or on this slide, I conducted a survey to look at what the exact thing that can be done to support workers and to know what their concern is. And so when you look at the first chart, for instance, it tells us that workers are still looking for their work back to be able to earn income. But on it, the record shows that the workers or the labor force is looking more, or the first thing they are looking for is psychological support. So which means that they have their mental experiences and then their emotional experiences need to be supported. So which means that they are looking for something more than going back to work, or than having their work back or earning income. So the fear of losing their job is is not as high as the problems or the psychological issues they are facing. And when you look at the figure next to it, you notice that workers are rather worried that they do not take part in the decisions, and for that matter, they are unable to make input to move the situation forward, the difficulties they are facing forward. And so when you look at this, the feedback that was provided and has been captured here, you notice that they want face-to-face interactions. They miss that because it has social implications for them, and that is why they are feeling lonely. They are stressed. They are having to take care of their children at home, and they are supposed to be working at home. Some of the workers are finding working at home extremely difficult, and they need to have a way out with this. And then decisions that are made by management seem to be selective, and the marginalized are more affected. The voiceless who in the organizations are more affected, severely affected by the decisions of management than the others that the decisions favor. And then you also notice that, for instance, those who have work, those who are keeping their jobs and keep going to work are also worried or concerned about the risk exposure, and then how they are concerned about their families and the way they go to work and come home, and some don't even get to rest. And so that is the concern they are also facing. And in the midst of this, workers are looking for employers to give them reassurances, but employers do not have the answers. They are also looking at how can we even survive with what is happening. So if the worker is looking at the employer to give, to provide some reassurances, that is not there. That will not be there because the employer is also looking for that kind of support or reassurance from elsewhere, which is not available to anyone because nobody seems to have the answers. And so my thinking, which I would like us to move forward and begin, is what are we going to do in people management situations? We have heard about innovations, but we need to look at the renewal process. So what are workers going to do to take hold of the situations or the work they do? So for instance, workers should now start looking at moving beyond going to work and accepting a job description, being told what to do, provided with the tools, and follow the process. So now workers should be looking at how can I make the work process better? So if you are giving the work and you are doing the work, you should be looking at how can I move that work ahead of how it is now. So for instance, if workers were looking at ways of improving their work situation and taking charge of their work, most jobs could have been saved today because the processes would have been improved and the processes would have been improved and work would have been done differently. But the other side of this thought is that employers ready to let workers take charge for the fear of losing control. So that is from the employer side. Is the employer ready to let the employee take charge, the worker take charge of the work and tell me that I have given you this process to do work this way, but you have found a better way to do the work? And will employers be ready to accept this? But this is where the thought and the discussion is moving towards. Workers need to stay ahead of the situations. They need to take charge at work and be able to even redesign their own work to make sure that they are providing some comfort to themselves so that these outbreaks, as it doesn't look like it's going to stop with COVID, because when you look at the trend, it just keeps coming. So that when the next outbreak comes, we would have learned from previous lessons and we would have taken the discussion forward. And that would have reduced the impact of the impact on workers when these situations reoccur. And when they reoccur, the impact will not be dramatically different, except that probably the mode of the infection might be different, but the effect, it looks like it's repeating itself over time, and we need to take anchors and foundations to be able to hold on to work, for workers to be able to hold on to their work and not be struck as it is now. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yvonne. Professor Amponsah, are you there? I think I've lost him again. So let me take questions on his. Oh, Amponsah is there. Professor.
I'm muted, that is why.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I have unmuted you, sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Yvonne Lamptey, for that insightful presentation. Yes, just as the Dean rightly mentioned, we'll take questions from colleagues. And as we indicated from the onset, it is only when you have a question that's what you would want to unmute your microphone and ask the question, please. If you have a question, you will want to unmute your microphone and ask your question, please.
Prof, Amponsah, my HOD.
Yes, please.
I salute, please.
I receive it, boss.
All right. Thank you very much, my sister, for this insightful analysis that you have done. And I especially like the content analysis of the May Day content and some of the issues they brought to fore. In your view, and from your analysis, I can see the psychological implications of COVID-19. Looking at it from an HR perspective, looking at it from organizational perspective, have we done enough at the macro level and also at the micro level within organizations? And I want you to answer this looking at University of Ghana, where you come from, and possibly, since your HOD is the chair, if you could use your department as an example or your school as an example. Thank you.
I will take some more questions and ask that, well, she answer all of them together because we don't have time on our side. So, well, if you have some more questions, well, you would want to. I'll crave the indulgence of my dean to read those that have posted questions.
Right. So there's a question that says enforcement of compulsory annual leave for breastfeeding mothers and pregnant women can create some office space. So, Dr. Lamptey, look at that. There's somebody who talked about your reference to unemployment figures in the US and whether or not those figures haven't changed since then. So those are the questions that I have.
All right. So the figures that are reported in this in the report are as at March. So the ILO report and the Global Labor Market Resilience Index, as I explained earlier, were measured before the outbreak of the COVID. And the unemployment figures were as at March. So now I expect that the numbers would be higher. For compulsory annual leave, leave for workers have now been used mostly for workers to go home. And so it's been given. But for compulsory annual leave for breastfeeding mothers, you already have some leave that you can access. And if the leave is extended, according to the framework that ILO is proposing or has proposed, you are supposed to be paid for the extended leave that you take. And what the discussion is that can employers afford? Can they afford to provide the extended leave that has been provided for or has been proposed for in the framework? For workers, nursing mothers to be able to stay away from work, they should provide answers. So the employer has done so much, given the work, designed it in some form and given it to the worker. If the worker thinks that I won't be able to stay home to breastfeed, provide a form of your work that will allow you to stay home for consideration by the employer. And then that can give you access to this benefits or provision you want to enjoy. And then that moves me to the first question is, are provisions now macro and micro level looking at UGB? When the outbreak came, we were all shaken. And when the university said, okay, everybody go home, we all ran home. And the place became like a good start. I think it was only the dean who was coming around. And the provisions here at the business school for workers seem okay. They take care of the protection, they take care of the protection, they take care of the prevention, the PPEs have been provided. I think it's not the wearable ones, the ones that will help you to clean up your hands, wash your hands, and then sanitize. And then so that will be at the micro level. At the macro level, which is looking at what the government is doing, I think the mechanisms that have been put in place they are adequate. They are adequate, but they are not just enough. So we are not able to hold on to the infection rate, and it keeps moving. And so there is more to be done, but at this level, we need to be responsible as workers for ourselves. So for instance, we can design ways to do work. So the one department informed me that now they work two times in a week. Okay, so now I have to wait for them for those specific days to be able to do business, because the business is still paperwork. So how can, for instance, a check that is printed, how can the money be transferred to the one who has to pick up the check's account without creating problems? These are the solutions that can support employers, because they don't have all the answers. So if it comes to my table, I should have some solution to move work forward. So I was asking that question sometime, but I was told that, oh, we haven't got there yet. Who haven't got there? So now the discussion is, what can the individual employee do to move the work ahead? And so at the business school level, it's working fine. It is now the turn for workers, individual workers, to take the discussion forward. What can I do to make my work comfortable? What can I do to produce results without showing up at work or without getting people to come and interface with me?
Great. So let me just put in a few things in terms of management at the business school, also to protect staff. When we were all asked to go home, we ensured that our staff went home. Like Dr. Yvonne Lamptey said, a few of the critical staff still show up, but they do so in turns. In terms of the support for our staff, we've tried to provide all of the protocols that we are asked to provide. Beyond that, the University of Ghana has decided to pay all staff irrespective of whether they come to work or they are staying at home. And if you are in management, you will realize how critical this is. For example, you would find that a lot of staff depended on overtime to cushion them up, especially the lower level staff. And now, because we all be asked to go home, they are not doing overtime. And because of that, a lot of them, I'm told, have negative balances at the end of the month. Now, what that means is that there's a lot of pressure on management to try and support the staff. And so what we have done is that all of the support that we used to provide staff before COVID-19, even though they don't come to work every day, we still provide all those support. So nobody has lost anything except the overtime, which is statutory by the university. But at the business school level, whatever support we used to provide staff, both in the form of direct and indirect, and those who are in the business school understand that better. We still pay all of that. Yeah. Staff who have had challenges and want something more to keep them going, we have provided that, and we still give opportunity for them. We are making provisions to ensure staff are equipped to be able to work from home because of the programs we run. So at the management level, there are a few things we are doing to try and
I've made progress, and
the staff are able to do their work irrespective of where they are, and that they are cushioned within this period so they do not struggle to expose themselves to the dangers of COVID-19. I wanted to make that small intervention. HOD, you want to continue?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dean. If we have some more questions, we can take two more questions, then we move on to the next presentation. Do you have some more questions, please?
Okay, so I guess that we can. I don't know if I have muted people, and because of that they can't ask questions. I've seen Richmond. Do you want to ask your question now, or it's past?
Yes. I want to ask now.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. My question is, I think when Professor Seth Oppong was presenting, he made mention of defining work as to how we understand work, as to is it a place or what we do. And looking at it from the human resource perspective, I want to ask, do we need some psychological orientation? Because in our setting over here, when you are home, it is really difficult for you to concentrate because the environment is not work environment for you to work. So would you recommend psychological orientation, maybe from management or employers, or maybe from the academic perspective, or even from the government, people, or they will be treated?
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Lamptey, you want to answer that? Is there anybody? I've seen Nokia 6.1 and Galaxy A51. Your hands have been up. Do you still have questions to ask?
Yes, I have.
Okay, Galaxy A51, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Martha Mainsa.
Okay.
Yeah, Prof, it has been very insightful with the presentation so far, but I have one question.
Yes.
How are we getting to the populace with this information? Because looking at even the number of those attending this meeting, it's just a handful. How are we getting this information out there? I've just been thinking about it. That look at how impactful the information you are giving. The presentations, the workspace information, how are they getting out there? For our managers to know, for our proprietors to know about all, because all that we know about is the men and the women. These things are not out there.
Okay.
How is your outfit going to work on this to get out there? Thank you.
All right. So just a quick one to say that these lectures are being recorded. So what we intend to do is to upload them on our YouTube channels and continue to share them. City FM had actually indicated to us that we should send them the transcript and they would find time to broadcast them. We wanted a live broadcast, but it doesn't fit into their programming. So we would give them copies of the record so they can get to broadcast them, so we can reach a lot more people. But let me just say that these are going to be happening every Thursday at the same time. So invite your friends and colleagues and your bosses to join in subsequent ones. Dr. Lamptey, you have one question from Richmond. And then there is Kingsley's hand is up. Kingsley, Ayuram.
Yeah. Yes, Prof.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. I work with the University of Ghana Hospital.
Okay.
I'm a medical lab scientist and also a psychologist.
Okay.
My question is this. Others have argued that wearing a face mask poses a danger because you see a lot of people touching their face mask continuously. And they say not wearing a face mask makes one conscious to maintain the social distance since the virus has not been confirmed as airborne. Please, what is your take on this?
Okay. Well, and then Joy, Deborah, do you still have a question now?
Me, I'm a class. I don't know what you're man to
okay. So, Dr. Lamptey.
Yes.
Please go ahead as I try to mute the person who has.
All right. Okay. I think I missed one of the questions. What I have read is that so for
you have raised your hand long ago.
And structure for the design of that.
Look at
typically employers will design work, and then by the time you are employed, they tell you how to perform the work, and so they train you and give you equipment to work. But what the COVID or the outbreak is making the workers do is to panic and go home, and then look at provisions that the employer gives them. So it's mainly following directives, but you can actually, as an employee, design your work and provide that structure to your employer for consideration. And if we are able to do this, so we talked about workspace, we talk about layout, we are talking about distancing and all the protocols. So if you design your work in a manner that will keep you safe and get you away from the environment or within the space where you think you will be infected, I am sure that your employer would be happy to consider it. And then there is also a question here about what the labor unions can do. The labor unions have a typical characteristic of negotiating with employers on terms of employment. If they move the discussion a little further to engage the employer to consider work designs that are proposed by the workers for consideration, then that could also become an avenue for employees to consider designing their workspaces and the work they do in a fashion or manner that can keep them safe. And also with the intention that if there is another outbreak, I am not going to lose my job, or I will be able to move my work everywhere with me and still keep it. There was another question I think I missed. The first question, I think I missed it. But these are the two that I have picked up.
Dr. Ajimambadu will want to make an intervention. Briefly, my brother.
Thank you. So just to add to the suggestion Dr. Lamptey gave, there was a question by Eze Galazi A51. How do we get this out there? We are all involved. We are all workers. We need to be part of the decision-making process. If our management do not invite us, we can still make suggestions. This is the time the unions of organizations must rise up. Unions are usually perceived as antagonists. They are perceived as grievance people. We perceive them as people always thinking of increment. This is the time unions must rise up and now come together to support management of organizations so that they will be proactive. Because the mental health side is very strong and people increasingly are becoming fearful. So that is one angle we need to look at. Now, many of us have listened to these insightful presentations from Professor Oppong and Dr. Lamptey. It is not wrong for any of us to write a feature article to any of the reputable outlets in the media to address this matter. At the workplace, if you are the EMACO leader, there are workers there. So even if at church, virtually, you could also share what you have learned. So we need to look at it from that particular angle. Then all of us together will support structures that are being put in place to actually tackle COVID-19. One hand cannot clap. It's a proverb in the northern part of Ghana. So all of us must work together. It includes you and I. And once we do so, we'll be able to get it far. And everyone will be responsible for our own safety.
All right, and then to provide an insight about the frame that I am proposing, for instance, an organization has a problem with commuting their workers to the place of work, and they were unable, they didn't know what to do. So the employer, the gentleman called me and explained and then implemented and then came back and called me to give me result and called me to tell me what they had done in their company. So when even though they didn't have a solution or a way out, they just tried to encourage the managers to throw the situation or the issue back to the workers. And then the workers actually designed the ways to implement the bus transportation for the employees to the organization or the workplaces. And now they are running the system by themselves. The managers are only supervising. This is the kind of thing that should be working, we should be looking at. Unions need to become a bit more strategic than they are. They really indulge in everyday work conditions issues. If they look at strategic issues that will look at business operations, not forgetting the welfare of their people, but more interested nowadays with strategic issues at the companies, I'm sure that the employers would be able to listen to them. But if not, and they keep at this level that they operate, then employers know that every time they show up, they want to take. They do not think about improving work operations or business operations or the bottom line profit. Then it will become a problem. But if we become a bit more strategic, we should be able to move the discussion forward.
And thank you very much, Dr. Yvonne Lamptey. And I'm thinking that, well, yes, we had press for time and we need to move on. But I would seek to address the last question, our colleague from the University of Ghana, a hospital, in terms of the wearing of the face masks, vis-a-vis the fact that, well, individuals will become very conscious about certain issues. One of the things that we need to understand, yes, from an occupational health and safety perspective, is the fact that, well, personal protective equipment are not in themselves curative. Let us get the understanding that it is only when we are unable to indeed remove all the hazards from the environment that we provide personal protective equipment. As now, with COVID-19, the difficulty of biological hazard and even the biological hazard difficulty, as you can understand from the discourse, yes, whether it is airborne, whether it is that. And that is why it is very important that, well, we provide a personal protective equipment, because, well, as at the moment, we've not found an antidote. To be frank with you, if there was an antidote or there was a vaccine or something, that then organizations wouldn't have even been thinking about personal protective equipment. We are talking about personal protective equipment simply because we don't have an antidote to it. So, well, yes, in as much as it is discomforting, and I would say that, well, let me use the word, I have a feature article where I talk about of fashion and protection. the use of personal protective equipment here in Ghana. You realize that, well, the challenge we are having is that the key word is not just it is appropriate personal protective equipment. The reason why some people find it comforting is the fact that, well, they are not using the appropriate materials. And that is why some people, as you wear them, you find that it's so uncomfortable. And people are not educated on the appropriate use of the personal protective equipment. And that in itself is also creating a whole lot of problem. Well, I think we'll find a forum and discuss the use of personal protective equipment also. But for today, we'll leave it here and we'll listen to another presentation from another distinguished personality. I have known him as a senior brother, a very distinguished HR practitioner. He's worked within the continent, worked at African Online, been to Kenya, worked there. He's worked as HR director for Stanbic Bank. He's currently the HR director for Gridco, one of the state-owned, very big, huge organization. And he's also a legal practitioner. Again, this personality we are talking about is also an adjunct at GIMPA. And that means that, well, yes, he espouses knowledge and he also shares knowledge in the field of human resource. Yes, because of his distinguished role in the military, yes, he's been there as a wing commander, so he still maintains the title. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would want you to really help me welcome our presenter, Wing Commander Samuel Allotey, the HR Director of Gridco. Mr. Allotey, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Prof. Eric Camposataya. I'm really privileged to be part of this discussion. The earlier presenters have really shed light on what's happening in the space of work because of the COVID-19. I have a presentation I'd like to share with you. It's on working effectively from home. I'd like to talk briefly about the impact of COVID-19. A lot of thoughts have been shared on that, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But an interesting aspect I also like to touch on is that we were jump-started. Most of us did not intend to work from home anytime soon. It was something that we thought would be coming in the future. But we wake up one morning and that is the reality. Some management perspectives have been shared by Dr. Yvonne Lamptey and also Professor Oppong. I'd like to touch on it from a practitioner standpoint. What challenges were thrown at us on the President's March 15th address. Suddenly reality dawned on us that some things will have to move. It cannot be business as usual. Now, the themes, that is the workers, what are their perspectives? And what are the downsides of the COVID-19? Are there any benefits to the new normal? Is there a silver lining to this cloud? And then we'll look at some tips for working from home. I hope the audio is clear. Prof. Moderator, is the audio clear?
We can hear you very clear, sir.
Thank you, most grateful. So we realize that with the coming place of COVID-19, we are going to change from brick and mortar, that is physical structures, to a digital and virtual workspaces. Some industries, like the financial sector, the banks, have always urged us to use online banking, internet banking, and move away from coming into the banking halls. Also, the absence from work is normally seen as being unproductive, but realize that even when you are home, you can work. Some organizations are trying to have mother care units, creches, just to contain the situation of nursing mothers. And that means that beyond the maternity leave period, there's also an opportunity to work from home. Now, the COVID-19 has also hastened the ushering in of the knowledge worker. There's people who get paid because of some knowledge they have, and not because of some physical location that they have to be. I mean, doctors, engineers, lawyers all fall in that category. Madam, that's Dr. Yvonne Lamptey mentioned about ownership. We have self-managing teams where people own the jobs, they are accountable for the outcomes, they are also involved in the job design. So it's not the hierarchical structures. Now, this change started sometime in the 80s when we moved from pure hierarchy to networks and more lateral relationships. Now it's come to stay, that is more likely to be the future. The work design, the job design, job analysis and workflow analysis are issues that have always been kept on the back burners, but now we have to redesign the jobs. I mean, the work measurement, that is, what time will it take a qualified person to perform the particular task at a certain level of performance must be determined. It should not be the generic job descriptions we are used to, but actually whether the task elements really contribute to moving the needle, that's productivity. And of course, we've heard of the layoffs. The airline industry has been badly hit, and it goes also for other industries. Could they have been avoided? Well, it's early days yet, but I believe that in the course of the discussion, we'll look at, the nature of the layoffs. Madam Yvonne Lamptey touched on the trauma that comes with people being laid off. It's come to stay. What can we do about that? Can we minimize it? Can the union step in? Can government bring some packages to shore up, the challenges that we face? But in terms of impact, I think that it's quite traumatizing, but can we take a long-term view? How do we work ourselves out of this situation? I would like to just look at a quote from Darwin, from The Origin of Species. This is paraphrased. It says that it's not the strongest of the species that survives, not the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. Now the question is, to what extent are we, both workers and employers, adaptable to the change that's been thrust on us by the COVID-19 pandemic? So when the announcement came on that fateful day, staff were forced to work from home because definitely the social distancing protocols and the distance requirements of 6 meters and looking at how workspaces were configured informed that we could not keep everybody at work without compromising the social distancing protocols. So organizations now had the struggle of trying to put systems in place, get Veronica buckets so we can wash our hands, get hand sanitizers and all, even the IT systems, our communications. So it's quite been a struggle. And I believe that that is because we had not adequately prepared for a contingency of this nature. Then we realized that we had to do lots of video conferencing, so telecommunications costs went up. The staff morale has really gone down because of the uncertainties. No one seems to have the answers as to how long this pandemic is going to last. Is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better sometime? When will the protocols, be lifted, if they will? And then we also realized that some programs had to be canceled. People lined up for various courses and travels could not. Then the difficulty of assessing performance and productivity whilst working from home. It goes without saying that not all jobs are suited for working from home. And I work for the power utility, the transmission company. Definitely, a lot of our jobs are field type jobs. And it calls for teamwork. So definitely, these protocols for the hygiene, face mask and all are very essential if we are to discharge the mandate of our jobs. So what is management looking at? Most of our teams are fragmented now. We cannot bring everybody to the workplace. Of course, for this very reason that Professor Oppong touched on, that you don't want to risk an infection in the workplace and the dire consequences that will attend to that. And also there have been disruptions in the workflow and the need for us to go back to the drawing board to look at work measurements. Now, if somebody is working from home and he tells you that he spent a week developing a report, is that an adequate period? Or from work management perspective, probably that report could have been generated in a matter of days, maybe 2 days. And if that level of discussion cannot be had, then it creates a very difficult situation for the supervisor and the worker, because one believes that his input or her input is not appreciated. So there's a need for us to have some benchmarks that is agreeing. It's not one person imposing on the other, but coming to some common understanding as to how the work gets done. Now, management is also looking at the opportunities. The situation looks bleak, but if from the WHO and other agencies, it looks like the historical antecedents of the Spanish flu shows that this program is going to be around for some time, this pandemic. So we're looking at flexi time. Can we give people some autonomy on their work schedules and time and focus more on deliverables? You know, what can we expect in a reasonable time and the quality of work whilst they're working from home? Now, is there going to be a reduction in office space requirements? Because in some organizations, you may have maybe 40% to 50% of the people being at home. We have to put in place some shift mechanisms so that we can meet the social distancing requirements. And if working from home really catches on, then we have to ask ourselves, would we need all the spaces that we have today? I mean, like I said, we have to take a long-term view and look at it. Now, we have to build IT infrastructure. I mentioned that we were not expecting it this early. Some industries have gone ahead. They're very much in the IT-enabled scheme of things, but most organizations are yet to come into that space. I think an opportunity presents itself, you know, for us to quickly build that IT infrastructure. Even troubleshooting of IT systems can be done from remote, you know, areas instead of a service call. And these are opportunities that we need to leverage. The bit that is worrying is headcount optimization and capacity building. Management looks at the situation as we have it. Half of the people or a certain percentage are home. A few people have to come in. And we are assessing whether we cannot work differently. I mean, if we put IT-enabled structures, would it affect the headcount? already prior to the impact of the COVID-19, we've had some shocks in the labor market. You know, the financial services crisis and COVID-19 spectacle seems to have worsened, you know, the situation further. But if we're going to take a leaf from what Darwin says, we need to adapt to survive. So we're not going to impose, but I think that it's something that management and the staff groups will have to sit and look at and say that, look, yes, we can hold the fort, you know, shoulder the burden for some time. But when it comes to the very survivability of the company, we have to take certain decisions. It's a difficult decision, but companies will have to take some difficult decisions going forward. And I also realize that capacity building is key because we're not having IT-enabled systems. You know, some have gone rusty on their computer literacy. And if we are to work from home, then we have to have a rigorous program to bring people up to speed. So that, because working with systems you are not accustomed to can also affect your productivity, if not increase your stress levels. I alluded to the performance management piece when I talked about the work measurement. I think increasingly we are getting used to the idea of performance contracts. And I think that we will have to look at how we can have meaningful contracts, you know, smart objectives, achievable, things that people control, as Dr. Yvonne Lamptey mentioned. You know, people must be able to control what they do. And if they don't have that level of control and cannot determine the outcomes, then definitely it's organization that suffers because they will not be operating at an optimal level. Now, when we come to the workers' perspective, which I call the teams, you know, they want flexible schedules. We come to work and we spend 8 hours a day, 40-hour work week. But if you really put pen to paper, do a timesheet and look at what you're actually doing, probably you could have spent less time and achieved the same outcome. But we've been constrained to come in at a certain time and leave at, you know, 5 or whatever the closing time is. And we need to go back to the drawing board and look at it. Can we be more flexible with scheduling? Then we have to customize the environment, you know, to ensure that people can work comfortably and deliver the output that we expect from them. Zero commuting. I spend an hour and 30 minutes getting to work each day and back. So 3 hours I spend commuting. Now, in the working from home enabled environment, is zero commuting. Of course, every once in a while I have to check in with my supervisor, but I think that a lot of the stress that comes with commuting to work and back in the traffic, those who move around certain parts of Accra can best appreciate what I'm saying. If we can eliminate that, I think that's a positive aspect of the work. And of course, the work-life balance. You know, working overtime brings some money. People thrive on that. But some have ruined their health because of, you know, I call it a moral hazard. You need the money, but I think you also need to be alive. So with this situation, if people can work from home and be able to, spend some time with the family, build family values, and have some rest, I think that's a positive aspect that workers will appreciate. And of course, working from home has some distractions, but we can look at how we can minimize that. Now, some survey has been done. I'll share the survey report with you, but it looks like one of the downsides of working from home is loneliness and boredom. That emotional connection, the fact that during the lunch break, you can touch base with friends and find out what's happening in their life and all, and pick an advice or two. It's something that people have to move away from because of the situation we find ourselves working from home. Can we have some flexibility in the way we structure the working from home, so at least we can touch base every once in a while with our friends, colleagues? Can we agree to meet somewhere every once in a while? But the loneliness and the boredom is a downside. Now, discipline and self-mastery.
It looks to me like we've lost Wing Commander. We'll try and get him back. Professor Mpozatevia, can you try him on the phone? Sorry, let me unmute you. Let me unmute you, Professor Mpozatevia. I'm sorry. Sorry. I muted you. Okay. Yes, Professor Mpozatevia, you can talk now.
Yes, I'm trying to get him back.
Okay, great.
And this is part of the downsides of, how do you call it, the bit that you are discussing.
It is. So the, Yvonne, you are muted.
Dean, there's a comment here for promotion of herbal medicine.
Okay. So that conversation I am having with a few colleagues in the background about herbal medicine and what it is. I think that
Okay, I think I'm back now. Yes.
Okay, now he's back. The Society for Herbal Medicine in Ghana are pushing a hard agenda. Commander, you're welcome, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
If I have just 2 or 3 slides and I'm done.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so, sometimes we hear of the benefits of a power nap. Working straight 8 hours a day doesn't really augur well for the body. So with the flexibility of working from home, you can take a power nap, provided you have that self-mastery and self-discipline that it doesn't go beyond the time you set yourself and end up missing timelines again. Now, the Wi-Fi connectivity issues, it's a big thing. Like we just experienced, and Prof. Mpozatevia mentioned that it's also a downside. You need good connectivity to work from home. You need a good bandwidth. You need a good internet service provider. And I believe that it's one of the areas that management must take a keen interest in and help workers get this connectivity if they are to be effective working from home. Now, the other downside is the boss is on my case. Too frequent check-ins and assignments. People don't get unplugged because once we know that we can reach you, so we keep piling assignments on you, and it's something that affects workers' morale, commitment, and the like. I think some balance in there would be very important. And sometimes because of these connectivity issues or availability of people, you're waiting for an answer, non-responsiveness. You've asked a quick question, you need a response, and there's no response. That can be very worrying. So It's a new normal. I think that we need to adapt. It's the way to go. And once we can take out the stress elements of this new normal by enabling people to work from home, you can improve retention levels. Sometimes people, they say, walk away from their supervisors and managers. But I believe that this new normal, working from home in the comfort of your home, once you can deliver to your targets, that should be fine. Productivity gain due to fewer interruptions can also be managed. We can improve motivation because of better work-life balance. And also financial savings. If you can work without commuting and the convenience of working from home. It's also a way of getting quick turnaround times and faster decision making. Let me explain this bit. You know, most times we have what I call the serial processing. There's a document that should go through serially from one worker to the other, boundary crossings, moves from finance to HR, HR to audit, back and forth. With an IT-enabled environment, everybody who needs to get to see the document sees it upfront. If you have an ERP or any such resource planning document, even data that you require to do your work is available. So I think the new normal has enormous benefits. Barring the trauma that we find ourselves in, we must hasten to look at it. So people, a survey that was done by buffer.com, State of Remote Reports, I'll talk about the three things since the slides will be available. Unplugging after work. Because you can be reached, the timelines, your working hours are blurred, you know, and it's a concern for those who work remotely. They want to have a fixed time where the supervisor gets off their case so they can attend to other things. I've touched on the loneliness bit, the collaborating and lack of collaboration and communication, and the distractions from home. Time zones can be a problem. For instance, if you have to work with somebody in the Far East, you know, Philippines and the like, there's an 8-hour time zone difference. So for their 8 a.m., you have to be up at 12 midnight if any work is to be done, if any video conferencing, and that can be traumatic. But like I said, we may have to embrace. That. Okay, so the last slide that I have is that when we sit for long hours, we do have some challenges with our back, and there's this technique where we have to have breaks. Every now and then we have to break so that we don't ruin our backs. They call it the Pomodoro technique, but all that it says is that don't sit for long hours because it has health implications. And I believe the COVID-19 protocols are here to stay, and we're supposed to abide by them religiously. So I think that ends my presentation, and thank you for listening. I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wing Commander Samuel Allotey, for that insightful presentation. Another interesting one, bringing on board a practical aspect from industry and how really, as an HR director, well, he's feeling and some knowledge in that area. Well, at this juncture, I would want to open up for questions. Well, if you have some submissions to make some comments, well, at this time, well, you would want to unmute your mic, and you only unmute your mic when you have a question too. So please, you draw our attention, then, well, we will call you. But please make sure that, well, you identify yourself whilst you ask him your question, because, well, we want to network properly with you. Those who have questions, you want to unmute your microphones and you ask your question, please.
So maybe whilst people are at it, let me get a shot at Wing Commander. Especially when we look at the downsides of working remotely, I am an office worker tuned person. And this question perhaps links to one question that one of the questioners wanted to ask earlier on, related to our psychology of working from home. When I'm in the office, I can stay up to 2 a.m., 3 a.m. working. I get tired, I psych myself up. Once I get home and I sit down, I am off. When I stay at home, I tend to focus a lot more on the home environment and the requirement of being a father and a husband and all of that. And so when I am at home, my productivity is almost zero. I know that there are a few people who may be suffering that. Plus, the COVID-19 induced holiday for lower level kids who are also home and all of that. What will be your strategy for becoming a bit more effective within this myriad of challenges, and the bed is inviting you to come and sleep and you are there saying you want to work, sir?
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. I think that one of the things that we need to do, as you rightly said, it's a mindset. You know, we are used to a certain way of doing things. And the natural tendency is to always, you know, go back to the old ways. But if you can create a space, an office space within the home, and let the family know that now daddy has a slightly different routine. From this time to this time, he's going to be in a conference call with some colleagues, and he's not going to spend that amount of time commuting to work and back. And you create those spaces within your scheduling. I believe that with time, the family will appreciate that situation more. But the psychological bit starts with you, what I refer to as the discipline and self-mastery, because you need to change certain things about the way you do things. You know, you need to first embrace the change. Realize that there are other options than the way I've always worked. That's why we call it the new normal. Everybody is being moved into a certain space where you have to now work flexible hours, but work from home. So I think that it's more the discipline and also the change management piece, where the family knows that for a certain number of hours, you'll not be available.
WC, I just want to come up from my Dean's question and to ask you that, well, we are talking about working from home. I can imagine that the organization already has provided a workstation at the place of work, where, well, there you have your system unit, everything in there, a desk and a telephone, what have you, all you need, a printer, everything in there. Now you are supposed to work from home. The question I ask is that, well, whose responsibility is it to provide that workstation at your home to enable you? Because, well, I believe as a psychologist, that environment should be created, and it should mimic that work environment, so that once I enter into that space, I am conditioned psychologically that I am here to work. Whose responsibility is it to provide the working tools for me to work from home? Organization is saying I provided you with, how do you call it, a desktop, and it is there already in the office. You can't bring it home. At home, I need to be using a laptop. I need a printer. I need a fax machine to be, and so forth and so on. Whose responsibility? And can that be done for every employee in the organization?
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof, for the question. You know, one of the challenges we have is that, like I mentioned, we did not anticipate this situation. So it calls for an investment. Now, management will have to look at the situation. Let's assume that we have 30 people in an office, and we realized that 15 of them can work from home. And with that 15 working from home, we do not require additional office space to maintain the social distancing protocols. I think that there's a trade-off there, because if you want to, if with the assumption you need everybody to be at the workplace, then why don't you invest in laptops or portable devices so that people can log in and work rather than you having to look for additional office space. So there are some trade-offs, you know, and management needs to take a very hard look at it. In fact, sometimes you'll be amazed that giving a laptop is a privilege, you know, for some organizations. I don't think it is, because yes, there are security issues, people compromising data and the like, but I think that going forward, you want that aspect of portability, and you also want to put certain IT security systems in place to ensure that highly sensitive data is not compromised. So I would say that the organization needs to look at the trade-offs, because as Dr. Yvonne Lamptey mentioned, when people have control over what they do, sometimes you get better output. You must enable that process.
Very well, very well. Well, do you have some more questions? And Dean, yes, I can see that. Well, yes, there are some questions on the tablet. Can you please help us with those questions, Dean?
I also have a submission to make.
Well, let's hear you.
Okay.
If you can introduce yourself.
This is Seth speaking from Botswana.
All right.
Yes. So thank you very much, Wing Commander, for the presentation. May I say something in relation to the question that the Dean asked? How do you prepare yourself for working from home? You know, there are a couple of things one can do, apart from changing your mind and all of that, but setting up the environment so you can work from home is critical, as Prof. Ambosativia mentioned. So one of the things that one can do is to designate a workstation in the house where you call your office in the house where you work from. Then it means you are setting up the environment. Then you need to also establish a routine with your work environment in mind. Because when you get up, you dress up, or you take your bath, you do all kinds of things and prepare to go to work. So some kind of routine should be established so that it helps you to also think about the work. And then another thing that has also been suggested is that you try to track your progress with a to-do list. So the individual has to have a to-do list so you can track how well you are doing work, or how far you are with the work. And then importantly, as you mentioned, you need to schedule economic breaks. So you don't sit all the time working. Just like in the old work environment, there will be breaks. Then you should also schedule breaks. So all of that will be a way to create psychological fidelity or similarity to the old work environment. So one can also work within that setting. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Seth. We very much appreciate Seth Oppong. Thank you for that comment as well. Do you have any more questions? Any more comments?
My comment is that employers also assume that workers have workspace. They assume that if I tell you or I request you to work from home, you have workspace, let's go and get it done. That is an assumption which has to be looked at, because if I am in a single room with my parents and my siblings, 5, and we share the same facilities, where am I going to get the workspace from? That is also a discussion or a thought employers should be considering. That it is not always the case that employees have workspace.
Yes, I think I share that view, and that's why the work design, should be something that is a responsibility shared between the people. You should bring your peculiar circumstances to the fore. I have a slide showing, some tips for working from home, which shows about the physical space, the virtual workspaces, and like. I think that these things must be designed. Most organizations don't have them, as we speak. And that design must not be, bringing in a consultant and just, but it should also involve some project teams to look at how the well-being of the worker can also be accommodated. And more especially his or her peculiar circumstances. That I share that as a strong view. They must be involved in designing how these work.
Or do you have any more concerns? Dean, are you there?
I think I saw him get up.
I'm
Yes,
sorry,
hello?
I got interrupted by Dr.
Hello.
with his mini troubles. But
Hello?
I'm here.
Yeah, let's hear you. Yeah, Galaxy, can we hear you?
Yes, okay. My concern is workstation has not been provided for workers, and you were expected to create one for yourself. Work outputs has increased from my workplace. Salary have been decreased. And how do I balance this? I'm getting devices to prove. Even when I go to work, I don't spend that much. Now data is taking almost everything that they are paying me for. Yet they have reduced the salary. How do I balance this? And it's psychological concerns. How do I balance this? Thank you.
May I address that though?
Yes, please, WC.
Okay, yeah. We've all been caught on the wrong foot. And like I said, organizations are struggling to even understand how they can manage, even the protocols. The beauty of some of the tools that we have today, are enabled even on our phones, and I think that we need to take some baby steps, but organizations must still hasten that transition, because if you expect someone to work from home, the person is as traumatized, as even the organization itself, but even more so, because the organization has, the structures in place, but the individual will now have to manage some structure in the home. And as Dr. Lamptey said, if the person is living in a one-bedroom compound house, where is that workstation going to be set up? So I think that some support, the employers must look at some support to facilitate, that transition. And meetings can be set at times where you can move away from your physical dwelling place. If you have a smartphone, you can still move somewhere where you can, at least engage in a meaningful discussion of sorts. But the infrastructure to enable the working from home needs to be put in place. Like I said, most organizations don't have it yet.
So, Commander, this is a very important question that has been raised. My colleague, Professor Mposate, mentioned it about workstation at home, and it's becoming a regular feature. And we, as a school, are currently dealing with it. I think what is the case is that, like Commander has said, we didn't jump, we got pushed into it. And getting pushed into this means that everybody who is along and who is the we would get bruised at some point because of the fact that we were not prepared for this. So I get a sense that staff are are hurt in this process, and organizations are hurt in this process. Organizations are losing huge incomes and bottom lines are affected. The most rational, selfish thing for businesses to do is to prune off a lot of staff so they can remain profitable, at least to make sure that the business doesn't go down the drain. But is that the most humane, humanistic approach to dealing with the problem? Maybe not. So what this may require then would be that both the organization and the individuals, as individual staff, would have to give something. In other words, something must give. And because something must give from both sides, organizations may be committed to making some contribution. Employees may have to make some contribution to make sure that we meet each other halfway so that we can keep the employee, so that the organization can keep surviving. I think that if it doesn't become a symbiotic relation, but becomes a parasitic one, one would die. And I think that whilst unions and employees are advocating for organizations to stretch forth to meet them and, for example, provide all they require to be able to work at home and all of that, plus not get salaries slashed, plus not get people laid off, it's going to be very tough for organizations. And I'm talking this way, I guess, because now I'm in management and I am looking at all of the issues around. And so I think that in the advocacy to make sure that both organization and employees survive, we may have to meet each other halfway. My former university, University of Manchester, the first thing the Vice Chancellor did was to take a 20% cut. All management staff took a 20% cut of their salary. Then they went down for the people whose jobs they could easily take away. And they went down to look at how they could cut waste, if you like, or luxury things. And they went down trying to prune down because they estimate that they are going to be losing almost 150 million pounds from international students who are not going to be coming. And as a university, I'm talking as a university, the next level of student admission, we don't know how numbers are going to be. Will we be able to keep everybody even in the course of this? And that is how organizations are beginning to think. So rather than advocate for total submission and get everybody to still remain, I think that something must give at both ends so that a bit of bruising will be better than a parasitic relationship where one of these two will die.
Yes, Prof, if I may just add to what you're saying.
Yes, please.
It's so true. If you look all around us, if you're following world trends, especially the airlines, reluctantly, even sitting arrangements in planes now will have to be adjusted. The payload, that's the carrying capacity of the plane for which probably a loan was taken, cannot be met. So instead of doing a trip and making X dollars profit, it has to do 4 trips, and the fuel and, the crew salaries, everything. So I really share your view that we need to go back to the drawing board and be very dispassionate and honest with ourselves. Is this sustainable? Now, which of the species will die? Because when the organization dies, we die with it. So it's something that we need to look at.
Thank you very much, sir.
Well, I hear you, two senior management colleagues. If you indicate that, well, yes, half a loaf is better than none.
You see now, my brother.
It is also said that, well, half-baked bread, if not taken, will not give diarrhea or constipation.
Crazy.
Diarrhea or constipation. So, well, Dean, I guess there are some questions on the tablet. If you can read it for us, then we can move on to the last one.
So there's a question from Mango which says, very informative and helpful. I love how the presentation flew. Thanks for the insightful presentation on the psychology of working from home in general. Vance says, hello, Commander. Will you advise that moving Oh, sorry. Will you advise that moving forward, regardless of employee work schedule or department, at least once in a week, work is executed outside the traditional setting of office, lecture hall, radio station, etc. If so, if yes or no, why? So would you advise that going forward, occasionally we move work away from the traditional setting and get it in? I'm not taking your answer away, but I guess that this is why most organizations will have a retreat of a sort once a while to try and go and try and get to reason and to strategize and to get back. But the question is for you, sir.
Okay, right. Thanks, Prof. I'll take it from something Prof. Oppong said. He said, work is not where you go, it's what you do. Now, are we having fun or work is a drudgery? Are we doing it reluctantly with pain and inertia? And if not, then why can't we bring the fun element to work? I recall when I was working in Uganda, once every month, we had a happy hour, where we all go to, a restaurant, and of course the company picks the tab, but it was just to unwind, and let people, share certain things that you never pick in the performance appraisal, the little pains at home, and that emotional support. So I am a strong advocate, of working outside the confines of the workplace, taking periodic retreats and the like. It builds that esprit de corps, that relationship. But work must be exciting. It should not be. If you have to go to work and you have doubts about whether it's worthwhile, then there's a fundamental problem. You must be excited about going to work.
Commander, this last one, I see a gender dimension in the comments that are appearing on our platform. There are a few who have said that taking care of their kids as well makes working from home difficult. And then there's Efua Lee says, my challenge has been helping the children with their schoolwork and being productive with my work. I realize working from home is more suitable to my spouse because the children do not bother him that much compared to me. So this is a gender cross for the ladies.
Yeah. I think that I'm a strong advocate for gender equity. I believe that women play unique roles in the society, and we should cut them some slack. In the Scandinavian countries, the maternity leave durations are much longer than what we have here. And if the state is to exist, and the women play a very key role, and we should not, you see, when we talk of equality is fine, but I think equity is more like it, to look at the specific needs of women and to meet those needs. So if people have to stay at home and can contribute in between times, for 16 weeks or whatever the duration of the maternity leave is. And we know that when kids are growing up, they have teething problems, and some element of absence from work should be accommodated. But it is just the nature, it's just the scheme of things. They are women, and that is the way they were designed. They will have to have kids for the state. I will say that the children are not just for the families, they are for the state. And we have to start looking at that aspect differently. I mean, these are personal views, as with other things I've shared.
Kwasi, take over.
Well, interesting discussions, very well. Thank you very much, WC Allotey. Indeed, work should be enjoyed, not endured. Individuals would want to go to where they are celebrated, not where they are tolerated. Insightful presentation and we have enjoyed it. Well, we will go to listen to our last presentation, and it is coming from another distinguished personality. His background, initial background, has been engineering, and he is a civil engineer who has been practicing engineering all his life out there in the UK, helping out in the road construction and transport industry. Yes, along the line, he found leadership to be an interesting area, grow business, and so, well, his PhD, he moves into the area of leadership. He has over 40 publications to his credit in the area of leadership. Well, my twin brother in the business school. Everybody knows that he's my twin brother. In actual fact, I took over from him as the head of the Department of Organization and Human Resource Management. He's a very good person, very sound, grounded in the area of leadership. And to listen to him talk on his area, on the subject matter of leadership, it's always a delight. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Dr. Kwasi Dartey-Baah to speak to us in the area of leadership during the COVID. Chief, take us away.
Thank you very much, Professor Aponsa, Chief. I've so far enjoyed all the three presenters, what they've said to us. Quite insightful knowledge has been expressed this evening. I'll continue with the good work that has been done by speaking to you this evening on confronting the revelations of COVID-19, a leadership call. As you rightly said, I see leadership in every aspect of life, and I want to weave that into our discussions this evening. So we'll start by looking at the outline that we have for today. I'll try and talk about what the revelations are, try and situate it within our context. How do we confront this challenge? What are the key factors that will help us within our context as a country? And then also how to move forward on this. But to achieve this purpose, I will try and chart a certain path in terms of the plot that I want to unveil this evening. And by that, I'll be showing you some pictures, and that within that shows the revelations that I have mentioned in my presentation. The first you can see is COVID-19 lays bare the cruelty of neoliberalism. And briefly comment on the fact that the neoliberals argue that social problems are better solved by the private sector than government. I'm sure that the revelation to us in COVID-19 is that the challenges that confronts us today, in my mind, are better handled by government than the private sector. The private sector can provide some support, but the sums involved, the public sector is well placed in that regard. Now, let's look at another revelation. COVID-19 lays bare the political leadership deficit in Nigeria. What this seeks to communicate to us, this was written by Temi Tayo. I was first published in Business Day, but then it has been republished by Global Voices. And within that submission, it advances the fact that when it comes to leadership, the way things have been handled, it really lays bare the challenges that exist in Nigeria. So some of the points you'll be seeing are more or less reinforming certain thoughts that have been had in the past, and some also are kind of a revelation to us because of the COVID pandemic experience. The next point is COVID-19 lays bare the disadvantages of the digital divide. This is a point that has been made by at least two of the presenters about our IT infrastructure. The fact that as a country, we certainly need to rethink about our developments and making sure that we all have our fair share of the cake out there when it comes to IT investments and development. And in fact, this is something that cuts across nations of the world, not Ghana alone. Then we have a very interesting point here. G20 nations accept that COVID-19 has exposed weaknesses in the health system. The revelation is that some of us have thought that there are some parts of the world that cannot be touched. They are the no-go areas because they have all that it takes. I spent a number of years in the UK, and I'm surprised how the National Health Service is struggling to cope. It tells you that, indeed, we all have our limits as to how far we can go. And one thing that even I picked up listening to BBC about a week ago was the Deputy Director of Health in China, Xi Jinping, who admitted that there were lapses in the health systems in China. This is quite interesting, a revelation that in the past will never come easily, but COVID-19 has revealed this. Then we also, some of you are very familiar, COVID-19 lays bare managers' efficiency obsessions. And I decided to use this picture because it speaks of the deep water horizon difficulty that happened, explosion that happened in 2010. Somewhere in April was 10 years when that happened. We know that about 11 to 13 people lost their lives. About 3 million barrels of oil were leaked into the Gulf of Mexico. And when some sort of investigations was done by a US investigation team, they concluded there was purely failure of management. Now, when you push this further and you get into the document, what you find is that that failure of management was basically obsessive, desire to make profit and cutting corners in the name of efficiency at the expense of safety. So efficiency, yes, but at what cost? We must ask ourselves. The world and the health sector in the past has operated more or less along the lines of let's get along, if there are problems, we'll fix them. But I think perhaps it's time to predict and prevent. And that is something that COVID-19 reveals to all of us. Then we move on to something that is within our context, situating the revelation within our context. Asokwa MCE apologizes for disregard for social distancing in government food distribution. And we are also very much aware that something of this nature also happened in other parts of the country, where with all good intentions, the issue of social distances was compromised. This is something that I want to spend a bit more time on, especially when I think about what the picture that we can see on our screen now. As a country, what are some of the things that we can do to ensure that our systems are robust and they can compete anywhere, even when it comes to managing the challenges, the real challenges of social distancing, and also managing the spread of the virus. To do this, I think that there are two fronts that I want us to look at: effective and efficient decentralization drive and effective leadership. Normally, when we talk about effectiveness, it's about producing results that is wanted. When you produce results that is wanted, you can be effective. But when you talk about efficiency, it's about being able to produce the desired results without wastage. And so when we talk about decentralization here, we are talking about results that are needed and that also minimizes wastage as a country. So I'll start by spending a bit of time on our decentralization drive as a country. We know that in 1988, there was some administrative reforms to decentralize some of our activities in this part of the world. Decentralization basically is the transfer of power or resources from central government to local government units. It's more or less what I call power to the people, where the assemblies are empowered to be able to work for all of us and to ensure that decision-making processes are well engaging and all who matter are involved in the making of decisions. Decisions are not left at the central government level, but it comes down more to those who eventually it impacts. So that is the essence of decentralization here. And it has some benefits, but have we leveraged on this to our advantage as we try to develop as a country, and which is also critical to our resilience when it comes to challenges or like the crisis that we currently experience. I go on to emphasize the fact that in most developing countries, decentralization has been one of the most opted options when it comes to political and administrative reforms, ensuring that we are able to engage at the lowest level. And this is something that we, as Ghana, is captured within our 92 Constitution, Article 35D, under the Directive Principles of State Policy and Chapter 20 on Decentralization and Local Government. This is something that is within our books. Now, when I talk about decentralization in this part of the world, to be fair, there are some names that you cannot miss. Ahoy is one of the names. Ahoy in 2010 advised the point that our type of decentralization is more of devolution. And it went further to make a case, according to Ahoy, i.e. that when we talk about devolution, changes must happen at 3 levels: at the administrative level, the political level, and the fiscal level. The local governments must also be empowered to set their goals and objectives. They should be able to drive their unique policies and strategies, and they should have that capacity to be able to mobilize resources and even to borrow on capital markets if they have to do that. So devolution within our Ghanaian setting is to really empower the assemblies to be able to discharge their work effectively so that we benefit as a country, mindful of those who may not be that pretty high up there in society. Now, when it comes to devolution, what do we have now? We have some information on the slide that basically captures what a metropolitan assembly is, what a municipal assembly is, and what district assemblies are. At this stage, I want us to quickly have a look at the structure of the local government system in Ghana. We have the Regional Coordinating Council, we have the metro, the municipal and district assemblies, we have sub-metros and all that. This is just to let you know that some thoughts really have been brought together in developing a system that can respond to our needs as a country in terms of decentralization. Now, but what pertains now? Remember that Ahoy spoke about the fact that devolution must be at 3 levels: at the administrative level, at the fiscal level, and at the political level. Well, out there's the perception that central government influences quite a number of things. One of them is even people who are employed within the assemblies. Administrative decentralization now obviously will not be what it's supposed to be if this is the case. Central government also is more of an agency that exists in the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Integration, which means that we do not see a situation where at the local level, the assemblies are empowered to take very important decisions without the influence of central government. At the fiscal level, we are very much aware that 85% of budget to the assemblies are normally from donors and from central government. That is the District Assembly Common Fund. These are the sort of support that the assemblies get in order to undertake their assignments. Sometimes we also find issues that they are not able to raise taxes to be able to undertake their assignments within their jurisdiction, because there's some sort of competition sometimes between government, central government, and their assemblies. As a result of that, they struggle to get human resources of the highest level to be able to help them drive their aspirations as an assembly or assemblies, as the cases may be. Now, what I'm trying to do is that as a country, one of the key areas to build our resilience, as I earlier mentioned, is to look at our decentralization drive. Then talk about political decentralization. There are 4 main issues that I want to touch on. Even though there are issues that need to be looked at, they have the backing of our constitution, and therefore they are legal. The appointment of MMDCs, the creation of new districts, the appointment of 30% of members of MMDAs, appointment of the administrator of the district assemblies common fund. These are things that are being supported, as you can see from the submission. They are within our constitution. Any opportunity that we get as a country to strengthen our decentralization drive, this should be some of the areas that we'll have to really have a very transparent and interesting discussions on. The second part is about the dependence of the assemblies on government, because they depend so much on government. We end up stifling ingenuity, innovation, and they are not able to solve their unique challenges, not because they cannot, but because they have to depend a lot on central government, and that hampers resilience at the local level. Certainly, there's little autonomy, and their work tends to be more of keeping to sanitation, registering births and deaths, and issues of environmental management. These are some of the main activities that you have assemblies involved in. I do think that as we have the discussions on the way forward, we can possibly expand their scope in terms of what they are supposed to do, and to empower them a bit more, which will end up giving them the opportunity to really deliver effectively to societies that they find themselves operating. The outcome of the decentralization that we currently have is that we do have incomplete devolution, which means that the lower level powers have not been adequately empowered. Devolution is basically the transfer of power or delegated power to lower level administration, in our jurisdiction here. Devolution is not what it is. The MMDCs are obviously appointed by government. We also have the MMDAs functions, which are currently not to some extent, because of the influence of central government, they are not able to perform their functions effectively. To the extent that sometimes the assembly do suffer. I remember some years back, it took a very long time for the late President Mills's government to rejig the district assembly's activities, because it took so long for some ministers, some individuals to be put in place to be able to drive the activities of the various assemblies. So we have to have a very serious look at our decentralization agenda, and to be very transparent about what we have and how we can improve on a number of the issues that pertains within that setting. The neglect of local government structures also, we see that happening, where sometimes political party structures do influence the decentralization drive. The inability of local assemblies also to attract top talent, because they don't have the financial muscles to be able to be effective in terms of bringing on board people they need, and also to stay at the cutting edge of what they do. We have the issue of conflict, and we know that situations where MDCs, MPs, and presiding members, because of political interests, they have disagreed on very key issues that obviously goes back to impact on the grassroots people. So this is to bring home the fact that indeed future discussions must be more encompassing in terms of what we currently have within our setting in the district decentralization agenda. The question is, where do we go from here? Well, it is commendable that the government of the day has a policy to introduce the election of MMDCs. I think that is commendable, because it's quite rare, especially in an African setting, to let somebody let past go when they have power. What this means is that powers that has resided in individuals, or the president in this case, is willing to let it go, just because we want a system that is more productive. And this obviously will allude to some of the points that I've earlier made. A system that will be more encompassing and will be bringing on board people from the grassroots level that can give us the sort of support that we need at that level, that eventually will impact the entire nation. My thought, however, is that it should be non-partisan, because once it becomes partisan, the influence of political parties will still be there. And I guess these are my thoughts. There can be other arguments, but the key thing is transparency in the discussion, and to ensure that when the time comes, every side is heard and firm decisions are made based on what the real issues are. We also want to submit here that there should be encouragement at the lower level to actively involve MMDAs when it comes to the implementation of their developmental plans. Yes, it's happening, but a lot more can be done. When it comes to distribution of relief packages also, the involvement, this is where the involvement of the assemblies at the lowest level can be very useful. We are very much aware of some of the issues that happened during the COVID, where, in the bid to help the needy and the poor in society, distributions were made to the poor, which could have been better handled if we had a very strong engagement at the lower level in terms of the district assemblies' involvement in what happens at that level. So these are thoughts that, in my mind, as a country, if you want to build our resilience, if you want to have impact in terms of being able to help those who need the most help, decentralization is very key. It's essential. I think it's one of the pillars that can be is instrumental to addressing the challenges that we face as a country, and also when crises come up, we will be better placed to deal with them much more than it is currently. Another second core that I want to touch on is effective leadership capacity. And for us to be able to do that, there are some questions that I want us to ponder over in the second phase of this presentation. And I want us to ponder over by looking at these slides. COVID-19 and leadership capacity, any lessons for us? This slide is basically a write-up by one leadership strategist. And this person, Thomas Primozic, asked this question: are women better at managing the COVID-19 pandemic? I want you to think about this. The next is a presentation by CNN where the question was asked, and the write-up was on women leaders are doing a disproportionately great job at handling the pandemic. So why aren't there more of them? These are issues of leadership that I want us to reflect on. Then this slide talks about what do these women leaders have in common. We have 7 women here. These are leaders of nations from Germany through Taiwan, New Zealand, Iceland, Finland, Norway, and Denmark. And if we have been following some of the discussions in terms of how the pandemic has been handled to date, it will amaze some of us how well these leaders that we see have been able to handle the pandemic. I actually took pains to read quite a bit about what has been written on them from CNN and from other researchers, and decided to do some sort of analysis on them. And I want that work to guide us in terms of leadership capacity, and to ask ourselves, are there things that can be learned from this sort of leadership that has been shown by these women? And if there are lessons to be learned, what should the lessons be, and how can we improve on what we already have? So I take you to this slide, and what I did on this slide was to go through all the writings that has been said about these individuals in terms of how well they've handled the pandemic. I'm not saying that men in leadership positions have not been able to do their bit, they have, but the women have also done their bit, and it is something that is very noticeable. If you go through the responses, trying to summarize what has been said and what they did, you can see that Angela Merkel was calm, candid, took the whole issue seriously, and took action quickly. The Taiwanese leader was very decisive, and in fact, CNN talks about the fact that the response in Taiwan happened to be one of the best responses in the world. New Zealand, the Jacinda Ardern, New Zealand leader, acted quickly, was clear on her goals. Clarity was there, decisiveness was also part of some of the things that she did. In Iceland, free testing for all, and they had an effective tracking system. They leveraged very much on technology, which obviously brings in the issue of innovation. In Finland, they also use technology, but They rely heavily on social media to spread information on how to manage the pandemic. In Norway, very interesting, the Prime Minister was very open, very candid with what was happening on the ground. And to the extent that she even engaged children to give them that assurance that it will be well, but it's also all right for them to be afraid, but it will be well. That level of assurance was something that has been seen as very important in trying to deal with situations like that. A lot of the time, we do not think about the children when it comes to such situations. But this is an approach that has been seen as very important in the way the crisis has been handled. But apart from that, also very active and decisive in taking decisions. In Denmark, decision was quickly taken and very open about the whole challenge of the pandemic. Now, having done this, I did a thorough assessment of all that had been said, and I came up with 4 key issues emerging from the leadership approaches and the responses that have been put out by these 7 leaders. Decisiveness, simplicity, openness, and clarity of thought. These are the 4 key issues that is emerging from the effective delivery of the 7 leaders that we have just mentioned. I went further to do some form of analysis. As I pondered over these 4 areas, I thought that they can be grouped into 2 factors, what I call the individual factors and individual enhancing factors. I saw all the 4 areas or factors to be individual factors: decisiveness, simplicity, openness, clarity of thought. So what do I mean by individual factors? Individual factors are factors that are more personal in nature. How the individuals come across informs how they respond. So the issue of personality comes in here. One must have that attribute to be decisive, to be simple in their communication process, to be open-minded, to have that clarity of thought. Within these 4 emerging areas, I also noticed that 2 of them I call the individual enhancing factors. What are these? The individual enhancing factors are basically factors that will come normally from the support that a leader will get from the team around the leader. So the experts, you can say the experts around the leader, the advice that the experts give to the leaders can pass as the individual enhancing factors. But it's also important to say that when the individuals who are the experts have given advice to the leaders, it is a decision that the individuals will have to make. So I'm arguing from this presentation that the level of decisiveness of the leaders in crisis depends on the level of advice that they get from the experts. But it must go further to the leader to be willing to understand what is being communicated to the leader to enhance the level of decisiveness with which decisions are taken. So individual enhancing factors are linked in a way to your ability to take advice and to understand what is being communicated to you and to act in that light. So you can say that within our setting here, we have advisors who will be giving medical advice to the powers that be, and that informs the level of decisiveness with which they take decisions. So it is an enhancing factor. And then clarity of thought. Clarity of thought can also enhance the individual factors, because once you get advice and direction from the experts, it brings a lot more understanding and clarity to the issues that you have to deal with. That is why I see clarity of thought as an individual enhancing factor. I do not see simplicity as an individual enhancing factor, because we have examples around where there are nations of the world, developed nations of the world, who I believe have good advisors, but that simplicity that is needed for the leader to communicate the ideas is not there. So it's a choice. You can get good advice, but if you don't have that individual factor to be able to communicate clearly, you will not be able to have that impact. And then when it comes to openness, openness is also something that is very important in the discussion. Openness speaks of transparency and the willingness of the powers that be to tell it as is and to also give that assurance. Yes, you can enhance your knowledge in terms of the information that you get, but we also have examples of leaders across the globe who have refused to be open even though they have the facts, and they rather blame other countries and other people for the woes that they experience currently. So decisiveness, simplicity, openness, and clarity of thought are the 4 factors that I saw were instrumental to the excellent performance of the 7 leaders that have shown leadership in this pandemic. I took this discussion further by looking at interrogating this further, and the more I pushed these elements, I saw that the 3rd factor, the openness. When a leader is open-minded, that leader is likely to encourage intellectual stimulation. What that means is that that leader is willing to tolerate views that are contrary to his or her views. When you are open-minded, you are tolerant, you are likely to take advice. And clearly, I see that as one of the key issues that may have contributed to the sort of delivery of the 7 women leaders that we have just discussed. The other bit also that I see from openness is individualized consideration. Individualized consideration is the willingness to listen to people who are lower than you in terms of stature and status, your willingness to show empathy and compassion in the midst of crisis. And I want to argue that this is also one possible contributory factor to the performance of the leaders, women that we have just touched on. Now, as you may be aware, transformational leadership talks about 4 very important factors. One of them is intellectual stimulation. We have idealized consideration. The next 2 is idealized influence, which is more of the influence and the modeling that the leader brings to the table. And then we have inspirational motivation. Out of these 4 elements, I see 2 be very much alive within the openness discourse. So clearly, intellectual stimulation and individualized consideration happen to be the very important elements that I see within the transformational leadership discourse, which I strongly believe was a contributory factor to the performance of the 7 women leaders that we have just touched on in terms of the discussions. So the question now is, the key factors for effective leadership, or the point is the key factors for effective leadership delivery in COVID-19 pandemic and crisis management in general, as per the submissions that I've made, depends on 2 factors: participatory leadership and empathy or idealized consideration. If you go back to the previous points that I made, you will see that the intellectual stimulation actually leads to participatory leadership, and idealized consideration goes down, leads to empathy. So the 2 key words, the magic words in my mind when it comes to leadership, is participatory leadership and having a compassionate heart. In fact, it brings to my mind some of the arguments that have been flying out there within our context. Why is it that after 3 weeks, we have to open the floodgate for people to go back to work because people live on a daily basis and all that? Could it be because of that empathy, leaning, and compassion for the poor? And you'll see that in terms of participatory leadership, I guess there has been clear evidence of a lot of engagement at all levels in terms of stakeholder engagement within our setting. So these factors, I believe, are very much alive in our part of the world here. And we are very fortunate about that. As I showed you in the previous slides, there was this perception that there's a deficit of leadership in Nigeria per the submission that I showed. I don't think we have heard or seen that in this part of the world. And I have been able to make a case for my submission that participatory leadership, and empathy are key words in crisis management. These two factors may be the differentiating factors between leaders who have been effective and those who have not been. So to sum up the discussions for this evening, two things are fundamental to dealing with the revelations that has come with the COVID. Effective decentralization and then effective leadership. Within that, we have participatory leadership and empathy. I now want to pose this question. In confronting the revelations of COVID-19 and in handling crisis, whatever is formed, do we need more women in leadership roles or not? I ask you to answer this as a personal response to yourself. I want to thank you very much, and I'm very happy to take some questions on the submissions that I've made. Thank you. I think that HOD has been muted. I think HOD has been muted, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Kwasi Dartey-Baah, for that interesting presentation, moving us through the arena of public administration, down the line of human resource management, down the line of psychology. And it is quite interesting hearing, listening to you. You are so passionate about issues of leadership. And yes, you never disappoint when it comes to the issues of leadership. Very well said, very well said. At this point, we'll open up for some discussions and some questions. Well, if you have a question, you'd want to unmute your microphone and ask your question, but I would want to shoot first. First and foremost, I want to find out from you, Dr. Dartey-Baah. I would want to ask from you, Dr. Dartey-Baah, to what extent does emotional intelligence figure in all this discourse? Because, well, if you are talking about participatory leadership and issues of empathy, these are key pillars in the area of emotional intelligence. You're talking about women, gender in this regard. So I would want you to position the issue of emotional intelligence within leadership and in the handling of COVID-19. And that's my question for you. We'll take some more questions and you can put them all together, then you can come up and answer them all. Okay. So, well, if you have any question, if you have any comments, you would want to really quickly put it across so that he can handle all of them.
Dr. Kobi-Mensah has
all right. Yes, sir. Actually, I have a question. Basically, fantastic presentation. I think that there were some punchy lines that I was quite keen in it, and I would want to explore your ideas on that. I mean, given your 4-factor framework, which I love so much, that you articulated are the benchmarks for some of these effective leadership. Now, I'm sure that you are quite aware that, cycle last week or 2 weeks, there had been quite a number of, conversation around whether our side of the COVID management, i.e. the president and his handling of the COVID conversation, as well as the management of the entire process, whether it was the best or not. We've seen quite a number of attempts, or we've seen quite a number of engagements by the former president, also participating in the whole process. And there had been conversation whether it was appropriate for the president to acknowledge the former president on his leadership in terms of, coming in to join the process, or the former president should also acknowledge the initiatives put forward by the president in handling the process. We haven't actually had any of these sides commenting on each other's moves. Now, would you say that this 4-factor framework, what will be your verdict, for example, in terms of our president handling of the COVID situation in Ghana? Best or not so best? What would be a verdict on that, using that framework measure?
All right. Thanks very much. Sorry, should I go? No, you just take some more questions.
If you consider the questions to be enough to be handled out so you don't lose your thought, then you can go ahead. And
all right. Okay, thanks, HOD. So I'll start by answering the first question, which was posed by my HOD. The issue of emotional intelligence is very important in leadership. And I'm sure you are very much aware that you have not done a bit of writing in that area, that there's a very strong link between leadership effectiveness and emotional intelligence. Emotionally intelligent individuals understand their emotions, and therefore they appreciate the emotions of other people. The important role of emotional intelligence, when you mentioned it, it actually gave me an idea to enhance this framework that I've just put together. If you look at individualized consideration, it is one of the elements of transformational leadership where the leader must be compassionate, the leader must give a listening ear to subordinates, to followers, the leader must show interest in the subordinates. Emotionally intelligent leaders are likely to do that. So being emotionally intelligent is one of the elements that clearly will be essential when it comes to crisis management. And I do think that if you look at one of the, I think the Prime Minister of Denmark, or no, one of them, they were able to engage. One had to go to a level of even engaging the children to let them know that it's all right to be afraid of the challenges that are happening around, but we are going to deal with it and we are dealing with it. That assurance was given. And I think that it's an aspect of emotional intelligence for you to be able to connect with other people's emotions and to help them appreciate that we have a difficulty, but it's not the end of the world. So emotional intelligence is a very important factor for effective leadership. And in taking this is something that came to thought as I was trying to pull the ideas together just a couple of days ago. I'm sure that we can explore the role of emotional intelligence within the individual factors. So that would be my response, that indeed emotional intelligence is fundamental to leadership effectiveness. Whichever way you look at it, there's strong evidence in literature to back the fact that emotionally intelligent leaders tend to perform well in terms of their delivery, even in the short to long-term engagements of workers. So thank you very much. The second question talks about, has the government done well in the handling of the COVID-19? It takes my mind back, and these are thoughts that are put together following my research for this presentation. Participatory leadership, compassionate, or being empathetic. Well, if you look at this current situation that we find ourselves in, there are a number of times that we've heard the president present, and the president has most times shown that he has been engaging a number of key stakeholders in the process. This, in my mind, should not be taken for granted that it's a given. Not all leaders are participatory. Some leaders are more autocratic in their engagement. We have examples across the globe. You don't have to go very far, and you will see that there are developed countries where the leaders or the leadership has all the answers but has no answers. So I see participatory leadership at play in terms of opinion leaders that have been invited to share their thoughts and to bring their views to bear to inform policy and direction. So that is one. Number two, empathy. I see empathy and compassion also demonstrated, even though the handling of it could have been better when it comes to the issue of social distancing. I do believe that could be one of the reasons why this was not continued for a very long time. And that, in fact, is one of the reasons why I put this presentation together. As I thought about that scenario, wanting to help the poor, but a bit constrained as to how to do about it, I thought the answers lie within effective decentralization agenda. That is the reason why I refer to the fact that according to Ahoy 2010, decentralization within Ghana is more of a devolution. And it must have these three elements: devolution at the administrative level, at the fiscal level, and at the political level. So once we are able to do that and have a passionate discussions about how we want to go as a country, I'm sure we can strengthen our decentralization drive as a country. So I see empathy here. And in fact, you see, I did not set out to validate what has already happened in our country. I set out to look at what has happened in other jurisdictions. And from the findings, it's clear that participatory leadership has been demonstrated in this part of our world. And there has been some ample show of empathy coming even from individuals. We have the former President Mahama making a contribution. We have organizations, NGOs also making their own contributions towards the fight against the pandemic. I think that if we have a very effective and active decentralization system in place, this could have been well handled. Sometimes people may have very good impressions, but it may be misconstrued because of what happens in the process. So some have been cited for, political campaigning and using their wealth to influence the system. Well, it may be right, it may not be right, but the answers, I believe, lies in effective decentralization. As to whether the former president must be acknowledged by the current, I think that all who have made a contribution must be acknowledged. And in fact, it brings to mind the fund that has been put in place by the president to help raise resources to deal with the pandemic. I think that all who have made contributions to this must be appreciated and must be commended. Yes, the former president has made a contribution, and that is certainly commendable, as others have done. I don't know whether I've answered the response from Dr. Kopi-Mensah, but these are my submissions for now.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you.
Do we have some more questions, some more comments? Or I will ask the dean to read.
Yes, so let me see what I have on my desk. So I have here, emotional intelligence is central in considering the individualized consideration and intellectual stimulation in a broader perspective, as according to Goldman, 1995. Emotional intelligence encompasses self-awareness, self-regulation, social skills, motivation, and empathy. Not really a question, I guess. And then I have impactful presentation, issues raised are on point, I've learned a lot. Okay, so somebody says, can I get the recording? Yes, you can get a recording, except that it's very heavy. All 4 presentations, Dr. Brilliant presentation, and you inspire me, okay. Okay, so he mentions, yes, I think that I don't have any more questions here that are directed to the presenters. I see there's a one that just dropped. How do we get the recording? Okay, we are going to upload this on the UGBS YouTube channel, so you can always go back to it and watch it. So you don't need to get it now. By tomorrow or a day after, the video will be uploaded on the UGBS YouTube channel. Thank you very much. So when you Google,
hello, Prof. I have a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, my question is simple. With the talk of leadership, how essential is ethical leadership in the management of COVID-19 in our workplaces?
I also have a question. I actually have 2 questions.
Go ahead, Koyo.
My first one, I noticed that in Doc's presentation, he talked about decentralization a lot.
Yeah.
But in the decentralization process, I was also expecting to hear something on traditional leadership, especially looking at how informal our system is and the role that chiefs and opinion leaders within communities play in pushing public agenda. Does he think that our traditional leaders have played important roles within the whole COVID situation that we have now? And if not, what are the things he would expect that our traditional leaders should be doing? Then the second question has to do with the issue of the women leaders. I am also thinking along the lines that probably it might not be a gender issue. It could just probably be an issue of leadership style, which he has talked about. Because when you look at other nations like Madagascar, Rwanda, and of course Ghana, there have been reports globally that have praised these leaders. And these leaders have been male leaders, and they have been praised for their response to the COVID-19 situation. So if you are to juxtapose this to what the other female leaders are doing, then clearly we can also say that probably it's a matter
there's no gender card in there.
Exactly.
Right.
It could be a matter of what is his take on this? Because we have leaders like Trump who are also male leaders, but are exhibiting certain toxic traits, toxic leadership traits, which for me could be the actual difference when it comes to what the other leaders are doing right and these other ones are getting wrong.
Okay, so Dr. Dartey-Baah, you're going to give a shot.
Right. Okay, thanks very much. I want to start with the first, which is ethical leadership. Well, if you look at ethical leadership, if you look at the literature on ethical leadership, it's about the moral person and the moral ethics that the person brings to bear. And in fact, a very close look at the transformational leadership factors reveals that ethical leadership can actually be captured under individualized consideration, some of the attributes. If you go through literature and you want to get some writings of ethical leadership, you normally will have a bit of a struggle, especially when you are researching on ethical leadership. You have to always do that at the back of transformational leadership, because most of the attributes of ethical leaders, just like even inspirational leaders, they are captured within the transformational leadership elements. So that's the first point I want to make. Now, ethical leadership within the workplace. I think that in the times that we find ourselves in, organizations can be ethical by emphasizing and ensuring that the protocols as advanced by WHO are followed. You can be ethical when you are not leading people by your actions to contract the virus. If we have instances where offices are operating at full capacity, I see that as an ethical issue because we are compromising on the safety of individuals. So we can look at ethical leadership from that perspective, from that angle. Ethical leadership, somebody in the previous presentation, there was a question that was asked about people are now spending their resources to buy data to be able to function at home. I think that organizations will have to pay attention to it. If we say that we need to meet the person halfway, we need to go further to find out what does it mean? What does it mean? How much do these people earn? And how far can they meet? I appreciate the symbiotic relationship, but we need to interrogate that further. Because if individuals have to spend their resources to be able to provide a service to a private entity, making profit when they are not getting that sort of returns, then we need to rethink. So I do hope that when we begin to look at these factors, we'll be very open in the discussions and to ensure that we do not unduly disadvantage people. The issue of coming to work, it brings to mind a work that we did some time ago, myself and my HOD, about whether it's management by objectives or presenteeism. The fact that people are at work doesn't mean they are working. So presenteeism at work is not an indication of work. People can work from home. So ethical leadership can be played out in a number of ways by ensuring that we keep to protocols, by ensuring that people are supported adequately, by ensuring that the fears that people have are well contained so that people do not lose their work unnecessarily. I like the bit where certain organizations, individuals at the highest level are willing to take a cut as the Dean presented about Manchester University, where the powers that be were able to take some decisions so that they can support those at the lower level. These are all issues that I believe can help the work environment when it comes to ethical behaviors. Then traditional leadership role in the fight against COVID. Well, traditional leaders are always very important when it comes to how we get things done within our setting. If you listen to the news, there are some parts of the country where traditional leaders have spoken about the need for the people within those communities to keep to the instructions as given by the, authorities. So leveraging and relying on traditional leaders is something that is certainly a must. There are a lot of challenges that we face when it comes sometimes in engaging the society out there, which can be solved by traditional leaders. Once we all have a lot of respect for our leaders, and so their involvement, perhaps I would say, will have to be enhanced to make sure that we really get and leverage, from their kind of influence within the societies within which they operate. So traditional leadership, critical. Well, when you look at the local systems that we have traditional leaders within, and that is the reason why if we should engage a lot more in the decentralization drive that we have, all this will be taken care of when it comes to how to listen to all those who matter in trying to ensure that we have an effective and efficient decentralization arrangement. Then the question about women leadership. Yes, I do understand that if you follow the discussions, I made it very clear that indeed there are some men who have also done very well in handling the COVID. But we live in a world that most times the women are not well appreciated enough with the achievements that they come up with in terms of what they do. And it is, for me, commendable that CNN has focused on the works of these 7 global leaders, how they've acted and how they have been able to manage the challenges of COVID-19 quite well. When you go through the literature is very clear in terms of the effectiveness of male leaders and female leaders. The findings are inconclusive in literature. But you are right. What literature actually talks about is about the leadership styles. So we are not necessarily talking about gender yet. We are talking about leadership style. That's why I ended by emphasizing 2 very important factors, which are participatory leadership and being empathetic in your engagements. And we know that participatory leadership happens to be one of the leadership styles out there. So leaders can be effective more or less based on the styles of leadership that they roll out. But we're also very much aware that when it comes to compassion and empathy, I think that women have loads of them than men. And if you go through Mullins actually makes a case that they tend to be more transformational leaders who are women than men. Even though a thorough look at literature balances the argument in a way. So these are my thoughts. I'm talking about leadership styles. I'm not talking about gender necessarily. But it is also commendable that the women, if you think that the whole world we have 10% of women in leadership positions, then we need more because they can also deliver. These are my thoughts.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. President. Do we have any more comments? Because we want to wrap up quickly. We spent a precious time here. It's been so insightful. It's been wonderful. And
I have a comment.
Well, let's hear you.
Hello?
Joyce, can we hear you, Joyce? Hello, we're listening to you, Joyce, please.
I think we missed Joyce. Joyce, are you back online? Unfortunately, no. Okay. Joyce, we will put your question in the cooler.
Yes, I have some
Okay, Joyce, you are back. Go ahead and ask your question. It looks like your network isn't a good lawyer for you today. So, HOD, I think you may have to go on.
All right. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been so wonderful this evening. Before I leave for the Dean to conclude, I would want to thank you on behalf of the Department of Organization and Human Resource Management for your participation in this very wonderful webinar series. It's been so insightful. We started off looking at issues of health and the well-being of employees and how to manage physical distance at the workplace. And that was presented by Professor Seth Oppong, where indeed he gave insights on how we can design our workplace and how we can ensure physical distancing and indeed also protect the health and the safety as well as the well-being of employees who work within the organization. It was followed up with that of Dr. Yvonne Lamptey talking about creating resilient workforce, and where she also mentioned the issue of we having to engage employees and giving some decision-making latitude to employees to own their space, because he believed that, well, when employees are involved in the decision-making process, 1, they buy into it, 2, they own it, 3, they drive it, and 4, they will commit to it. Eventually, employees are an integral part of the organizational process, for which reason we should seek to be involving them in this crisis period because, well, the organization, yes, is part. They are part of the organization, and indeed they should be involved in any decision so as to get them much more committed to the organization. Then we had Wing Commander Sam Allotey trying to espouse knowledge on working from home and the sort of things that we need to do to ensure working from home. Yes, he also indicates that, well, yes, the COVID-19 bit, we were pushed into it. And for that matter, organizations are now trying to find their way out. But he comes up with various recommendations, as in, we making sure that, well, yes, our IT framework, our IT systems are very solid too, because, well, it has come to stay. It is becoming the new normal, as he indicates. So, well, we should make sure that, well, our IT systems are rightly said, try to also create working environments at home, workstations for our employees. Get employees also to be involved. He also talked about the benefits of working from home, as well as some of the challenges that he gives advice on how to deal with. But all in all, he believes that, well, it has become the new normal that organization going forward should be looking at. Crowning the presentation was that of my own brother, Dr. Kwasi Dartey-Baah, who presents an insightful one, looking at COVID and decentralization. And he believes that, well, power should be devolved throughout the local government and ownership should be at the local level. Large-scale change implementation should be implemented locally. And that is where we will see the true results. He goes ahead to look at in terms of leadership, where he emphasizes the point that, well, it is participatory leadership that is much more compassionate and empathetic that has been seen to be winning the battle. So, well, as leaders in our own state and in our organization, we should be looking at being participatory during this crisis period, being empathetic and showing much more compassion to our employees. And, well, he tries to also situate it within a context of we having to look at it in terms of transformational leadership style. Yes, we believe that all in all, once we have the interest of employees at heart, once we are concerned about our employees, they would also be concerned about the health of the organization. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you tremendously for your attention during this period, and hope that, well, the next time as a school we call upon you, you will come again. The business school, we have lined up another set of presentation in the coming weeks. So please be part of the presentation and let us share knowledge. Thank you. Dean Baole, I leave it to you.
Yes, please. Thanks very much, Kwasi, and thanks for staying through this, all of our distinguished participants. Let me join the HOD to say thank you to the presenters. You've done, my name is Justice, you've done justice to the topic this evening, and I I can see from the comments that indeed knowledge has been shared and that destinies have been shaped. What we have thought to accomplish using these seminars is to create thought disruption, to create thought crystallization, and to create thought leadership. And we hope that in that process, what we seek to do is to shape policy and practice. I guess that this evening we have succeeded in doing that, and it's my singular honor on behalf of the management of the business school to say thank you to all of you, and I wish you a very good evening. Remember that next week on Thursday, we will come your way with another session of explosive seminar that will look at other dimensions. Thank you very much, all of you, and enjoy your evening.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dr.
Again.